eliminate inequality. Many may say that in fact there could be other proposals like absolutely escalating the need for schools that are struggling in terms of facilities to get the facilities they require. That would be the important issue, and get the right teachers there as well.
Why not both? And that's what they've been doing. We've escalated quality. That's why a township learner can be the best, because we've invested in that. We've escalated infrastructure. We're building new schools, better schools compared to what apartheid schools were building for us. So you can do both. But the argument here is that why divide our children if you love them? Whose children must have a better education and other children must have a better education on the basis of their financial pocket? That's wrong.
Gauteng Premier.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. All podcasts can be downloaded on safm.co.za.
Top stories: ArcelorMittal CEO highlights key business challenges, and Russia jails Navalny lawyers for extremist activity. With the news, I'm Dino Mutaung. Good afternoon. ArcelorMittal CEO Kobus Verster says apart from low demand, the business faces a number of challenges, which include electricity cost pressures, railway issues, tax competition from cheap imports, and employee compensation. This as 3,500 workers stand to lose their jobs after ArcelorMittal announced plans to shut down its long steel production in Newcastle and Vanderbijlpark. Addressing the media after a meeting with Employment and Labour Minister Noma Khosazana Math in Vanderbijlpark, Verster says ArcelorMittal understands the dire consequences of his decision and is willing to work with government to find an interim solution.
Continue to advocate and request a level playing field. We want an enabling environment for manufacturing of steel. So those cost issues that we well publicized in terms of energy and rail, those need to be addressed. The unfairness in terms of the tax PPS system and the export tax, those need to be addressed. They are complicated issues, but they also there's a lot of people willing and able to work at it hard, and sometimes we can find interim solutions.
Correctional Service Minister Pieter Groenewald says inmates across the country's correctional services achieved a 96.2% matric pass rate. Groenewald was speaking at the Johannesburg prison where he announced the 2024 National Senior Certificate matric results for inmates. 171 inmates across 17 correctional service schools wrote their matric exams. Groenewald says this matric pass rate is a 3% increase from the previous year.
That we have 30 of these 17 schools with 100% passing rate. There are 104 of the learners who can further study at universities obtaining bachelor. There's an increase of 3% on the passing rate from last year.
Meanwhile, learners who are among the top 100 in the Free State have been honored at a function at the Central University of Technology in Bloemfontein. Premier McQueen Letsoha Matai and the Provincial Education Department have hosted the function. The province has retained the number one spot in the country's national senior certificate results. The Free State has achieved a 91% pass rate, an increase of 2% from the previous year's 89%. One of the top learners is Nkululeko Skoka from the Silikelekela Secondary School in Putadichaba, Twatwa.
I'm very happy but anxious at the same time. It's just a mix of emotions because I don't really believe that I'm here. I see that I'm here, but I don't believe it. Because I know I thought I'd be here, but there was that part of me that didn't think I'd make it here. So it's just really an honor to be here.
Moving to KZN, one of the mothers of the man who was hacked to death in the Bambai area of Inanda in Durban says she's devastated. This morning, shocked community members discovered the bodies of 5 men who had been hacked to death and their bodies dumped in a local sports field. Mother Koliswa Mavonya says the killing of her son is unfair. She has questioned why the community did not come to her if they suspected that her son was involved in criminal activities.
I feel devastated and I'm totally lost. I'm thinking of leaving this area as this is not the first time. His father was killed in 2023 and he was killed inside the premises. After this, they put him into the toilets. Now it's my son.
In other news, 2 men accused of the murder of alleged underworld boss Mark Liffman has been denied bail in the George Magistrates Court in the Western Cape. It is alleged that the 53 and 37-year-old men gunned down Liffman in the parking lot of the Garden Route Mall on the 3rd of November last year. They were arrested near Uniondale a few hours later. Magistrate Andre Okamp made the ruling, saying that the court did not deem their personal circumstances exceptional and it will not be in the interest of justice to release them on bail. The case has been postponed until the 20th of February for further investigation. Lastly, further afield, a Russian court has jailed 3 lawyers who represented the country's late opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. The court ruled that Vadim Kobzev, Igor Zigonin and Alexei Lipsa belong to an extremist group in most widely seen as a politically motivated trial. The BBC's Stephen Rosenberg has the details.
These 3 men were convicted on extremism charges. Basically, they'd been accused of using their status as lawyers and their access to Alexei Navalny when he was alive and in prison to pass on messages from Mr. Navalny to his associates. It's also interesting that nearly 1 year after Alexei Navalny died, the Russian authorities view Mr. Navalny, or at least his memory, his ideas, as a threat.
Recapping the top story this hour, Asila Metal CEO Gobas Fester says apart from low demand, the business faces a number of challenges which include electricity cost pressures, railway issues, tax competition from cheap imports and employee compensation. This as 3,500 workers stand to lose their jobs. For SFM News, I'm Dino Mutaung. The next update is at 3:30.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Kaizer Chiefs set to sign SuperSport United striker and Springbok winger forced into retirement. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
All our esteemed educators, a warm welcome back to school for the year 2025 calendar year. SACE, your professional regulatory body, wishes you an incredible and successful year ahead. Thank you for achieving quality, outstanding 2024 results across all school grades. Continue to inspire a credible and agile teaching profession in and outside your school environment. Your worth and dignity are valued.
Abafana has turned and the Rockets are both looking for a decent spot in the top half. They are all confident they will walk away from the battlefield with jubilance. This is the Betway Premiership. Catch the great passion and drama of Mzansi's beautiful game. Golden Arrows FC takes on TS Galaxy FC on Saturday, 18 January, live on SABC1 at 2:30 p.m. and SABC radio stations at 3:30 p.m. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Well, this January, to save money, you could cut back on the family prize. Well, that's one option. Or you could switch to OutSurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if OutSurance can't beat your car insurance premium, well, ask them for 500 rands in cash. And make that $1,500 if you've been claim free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With OutSurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply online.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
It's Friday afternoon. It does mean that today's National Pulse, as we get to the first business week of the year just about done, we will have our very first fireside chat. And so looking forward to that conversation at 5 o'clock. Poppy Khoza, you may know her. She's the head director of the Civil Aviation Authority. She's a big name with regard to airline safety in South Africa and around the world, and is so inspiring. When we talk about business leaders or business champions, she's very much up there with the very, very best. So looking forward to that conversation with her, and do hope you join us as well. Tell your chommies as well. They should do so too. In the meantime, let's reflect on this. What moves the National Pulse today? Yesterday, lots of conversation around the issue of a ceasefire, potentially at that time between Hamas on the Palestinian side and Israel, and many other issues, ongoing issues around education in South Africa and the Slowfontein mine, and many other things as well. We're going to talk about important issues developing today, but I want to know what you think would move the National Pulse. So to call in 086 000 2032. If you're listening for the very first time, do tell me, and if you're a regular listener, that's also good. Tell me too. Tell me where you're listening from, and as always, if you have a chance, you can also just voice note us with a picture wherever you may be. Talking about voice notes, you have an option to WhatsApp us, or to send out a text message, or you can send out a voice note itself on WhatsApp, 0614 104 107. And to the many people who are following us on Twitter, great, on the X platform. Of course, you can do it on all social media platforms, but certainly from a news-driven era environment, this works for now, live. Follow SAFM Radio. Do follow me, Ashraf Garda. Tag us, and then use the hashtag The National Pulse by adding your comments live in the moment. Remember this point about the National Pulse. It's not a 3-hour show. It's a 24/7 environment when we effectively gauge the mood or the pulse of a nation, isn't it? So with that in mind, let's gauge the pulse of a nation right now. There's an issue around nursing in the medical profession that has come to the fore. That is a big deal, I would think, okay? There's a story that's gone viral of you see, videos do play this huge role. Without video, we don't know about any of these issues, do we? So here's a story about a nurse and a patient in South Africa, and I need to add that the patient is a Zimbabwean national. Well, either way, living in South Africa. And the conversation takes place where the patient needs help, and apparently, according to the patient, the nurse doesn't provide the type of help and support that she requires, and the patient at some stage decides to ask for a transfer to another hospital or doctor, and the nurse refuses to give her all of that. Now, all of that is, in fact, documented as well. So we do have Lerato Mthunzi, who should be joining us shortly. In fact, I think Lerato is on the line. So Lerato is on the line. Lerato is the General Secretary of the Young Nurses Indaba Trade Union. Thank you for connecting with us, Lerato, firstly.
Good day to your listeners.
Thank you. Now, what we're going to do is let us play some of the sound as per the conversation I just alluded to between a nurse and a patient.
I have fully in. You're the one who doesn't want. They say she must read me transfer. She's not. No, I can't hear what time. I can't wait anymore. I can't. Read me a transfer. Let me go to the doctor, please. Shout as much as you want. Let everyone hear you. I want that. Take a pic. Yeah, I won't write you. Sue me. Post me. I can't wait anymore. I can't. Read me a transfer. Let me go to the doctor, please. Shout as much as you want. Let everyone hear you. I want that. Take a pic. Yeah, I won't write you. Sue me. Post me. I'll sue the sue me. Yeah, she never saw me. She never attended me. I saw her. I don't know where it is. I saw her. She can just do it now. Rather than sitting there, she can just do it now. Can you just ask her to do it now? They say you must take me BP. Me? Yes, you. I don't take BP. So what do you do? I sleep, I move around and yeah, like just like doing, can just do BP and then give me. And I watch Netflix and eat. I eat a lot. Yeah, that's why you're fat. That's what I yes, I'm fat and beautiful. Then
Okay, what we'll do is I'll hopefully get Vusani to, in fact, post that video as well if you can, so that people can see that as well. But let's then bring in Lerato Mthunzi, and the issue really is that as we reflect on that conversation between patient and nurse, the bigger issue is that the patient has demanded a transfer. The nurse, understandably, I understand, is not acceded to that, not even checking the blood pressure, even though there's been a request. But is there a subtext to all of this? Is there a context that we need to fully understand? And linked to all of that is the general issue to say, is this out of line from the nurse herself? Lerato Mthunzi, the General Secretary of the Young Nurses Indaba Trade Union. Thank you for connecting. Right, you've obviously watched that video and you've heard that conversation. What do you make of it, firstly?
Yeah, I think generally just watching from that video, one cringes, and I'll tell you why. Because access to healthcare is a right of all citizens and all who live in our country, and that is enshrined in Section 27 of our Constitution. However, having said that, it is also the rights of the nurse in terms of the SANC regulations that nurses have a right to treat patients who, and if they feel that the patient is being out of line, they've got a right to refuse to actually treat those patients. But look, if you look at this video, it's very brief. It's not giving us the entire picture. At the beginning of the video, you almost like hear this particular nurse saying that I'm not the one who saw this patient. He says this in vernac. And besides that, this patient is already obviously been there for a long time, was seen by other nurses or other nurse or even another doctor. And she's really impatient. She just says, if you guys are not going to help me, the one that you're referring me from is not helping me, you help me. And this one also retaliates and says you can make as much noise as possible. But I think there's also a professional etiquette that is generally expected from nurses. Obviously, patients, when they come to us, they come at a time where they are at their most vulnerable. And when they are there, the level of empathy needs to at least be exercised. And in this case, we almost see the patient and the nurse, you can't even tell who is who. There is no level of saying, okay, I hear what you're saying, let me see what I can do. Okay, wait for me a little bit. There's no decorum between the two persons. So I see a nurse that definitely degenerated to a level of really wanting to take the patient on. But having said that, it doesn't necessarily give any person visiting our healthcare facilities the right to now abuse the nurse or even, talk down on the nurses to a point of provocation. Because remember, nurses are also human like all of us, and if pushed to a certain level, they will also retaliate. That's what I'm saying to you. We don't know where this issue started. We are just seeing this clip, and from what we can make out, it looks like definitely a conduct that is not acceptable from both the patient and the nurse.
Okay, obviously your responsibility would be from the patient side, from the nurse's side, right? In terms of your trade union, right? Your opening line is, this one makes it you cringe. I mean, that's your word, right? So, first of all, you don't always say this, but thank goodness for the video coverage. Can you imagine? I'm just thinking about how often there could be video coverage like this, or the absence of video coverage, and it's a case of he said, she said, and you never really know what transpires. So, what then happens next in a case like this?
Look, I think we are inundated as a union where we are not dealing with issues of malpractice, but rather issues of attitude more than anything else. Things that could easily be averted by simply applying soft skills, by simply, speaking to the patient and calming the patient down. And these are definitely skills that our nurses and even our doctors are trained with. But I think we've said this, we are dealing with nurses that are really burned out. The level of patients is just not there anymore. And simply because by the time the clinic, I saw those benches to me looked empty. And I'm almost thinking, if there's no one, why can't you just listen to this patient, give them if you're able to assist them, if you can't, refer them to another person. And it's a very difficult one because you sit in the regulatory body, you sit in disciplinary hearings representing situations that are not even clinical, are actually just about, flexing who can say what better.
Okay, so with that in mind, there's been calls, and I'm looking at some of the social media coverage and audience engagement to say, well, you know what, therefore the nurse must be, let's call it tried, as one would expect in terms of a disciplinary hearing. Is that the route to go? I mean, is that something that you've considered? Have you, when I say you, and I'm talking about your entire union, have you had that conversation with the nurse at all?
Look, that's all we actually ever do in all our gatherings. We speak about how we ought to treat patients with absolute courtesy. And if we are angry as nurses, we are burnt out, we are underpaid, we don't have material resources, it's not our place to take our frustrations on patients. I mean, the only time we've got interaction with our patients is when they really just need help from all of us. But at the same time, the position of whether the nurse should be disciplined or not, it's the call of the employer, and that's when again the union will come in the defense of trying to make sure the nurse gets a fair hearing. But I'm saying, our call always to the healthcare workers before it even happens, if you are able not to find yourself in an altercation with the patient, rather follow that route.
Just lastly, very quickly, I mean, how widespread is this? I mean, meaning, is this very common?
Absolutely. I think you get to treat patients that really do not want to wait. It doesn't matter how many people are in the queue. It doesn't matter whether it's their turn or not. They just feel like, I'm not going to wait. I want to be seen now. And sometimes it's people that will even point nurses with guns and threaten their lives. And sometimes they say, you will treat my family member now, and otherwise, it's going to be chaos. So this is a very common cause, obviously because of lack of safety. I'm sure you're following that story in Limpopo where there was robbery. Safety in a facility. There's no order. It's almost like there's no way of making sure patients are safe, making sure healthcare workers are safe. So it's almost like a circus.
Well, it's almost like a circus. Exactly. It's a rather serious, and it can be a deadly circus if there's an absence of service delivery both ways. Thank you for your time, Lerato Mtunzi. That's a story that certainly has got lots of legs to run, and we will cover that when it unfolds. The General Secretary of the Young Nurses Indaba Trade Union. I'll get Fusani rather to post that video clip of that conversation between the two of them. I think it's such an important issue, and there's so many angles to that. Well, what about the angle of Joe Biden, almost to be the former president of the USA? We'll talk about his legacy in a moment.
Are you looking for the best spectacle and sunglass deal? At Specsavers, get a free pair of branded prescription sunglasses up to 3,200 Rand. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll get a fantastic price for your car. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Be in it to win it by playing Powerball and Powerball Plus for 115 million Rand in total estimated jackpots this Friday. You heard right. Play Powerball for an estimated 86 million Rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 29 million Rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. eTuba is the proud operator of the National Lottery. The Oranges boys want to wrap up their group campaign on a winning note, while Stellies want to deliver a masterclass performance to triumph away from home. This is the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup. Experience the joy of African football. RSB Pekane FC versus Stellenbosch FC on Sunday, 19 January at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
All right, what do you make of that whole nurse-patient altercation and what happens next around it? And as per the guest, Lerato Mthunzi, she says it happens very often in terms of demands from patients and therefore responses from nurses. What do you make of it? Have you had similar experiences yourself? 086 000 2032. Otherwise, WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. We're going to chat about Joe Biden in a moment. Here's one comment about nurses.
Like Ashraf, it's Mthunzi Ben here. This lady, she's talking nonsense. To be honest with you, there must be a level of responding with patient. I'm not saying that. It's just that I haven't seen the video like properly. But judging from what I've heard currently, since you've played the audio, like one can tell that the nurse herself, they could have able to respond in a manner which would have avoided almost everything. This woman, she's talking nonsense. No wonder why majority of the nurses, they're behaving in the way which they behave with, because of they've got women like this which is going to support them in the national radio station. It's nonsense, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's your opinion. Well, let's find out from you listening in. Regular or first-time listener, what's your point? What do you think about that whole nurse and patient issue? Let's talk about Joe Biden now. So, on the 20th, Monday, you have a new president officially inaugurated as the president of the USA. That is Donald Trump. It's a good time to talk about Joe Biden, what he did, what he didn't do, what he got right, what he got wrong, what's missing. With all of that, a person we've chatted to often, Professor Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics at the Clinton Institute at the University College in Dublin, at University College Dublin, rather. Prof. Lucas, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
It's always a pleasure to be with you and your great listeners.
Thank you. It's a good time, first of all, to give Joe Biden a mark, a report card. What do you give him? A, B, C, D, E, F?
Incomplete. And I'm not evading the question, but let me talk about general and then specifics. I think in general, I think the Biden administration, not just the president, but those around him, I think you have to give them credit for what they were trying to do in general. Remember, if you think back 4 years, if you think back of where we are, whether it was the U.S., whether it's Ireland, where I am now, whether it's South Africa, we were in the middle of a pandemic in which, we were losing friends, we were losing relatives, wondering what was going to happen on a daily basis, and we had a very chaotic administration in the United States. We had an administration that was denying that there was a real threat from coronavirus, let alone doing anything effective about it. It had pulled out of the World Health Organization. It was pulling out of other organizations, for example, environmental organizations. It was demeaning the United Nations. It was breaking international law, as well as cozying up to, in some cases, to autocrats, including Vladimir Putin in Russia. And so the Biden administration came in and said, look, we're going to rebuild U.S. foreign policy by rebuilding alliances, by working with others, and we're going to do it by repairing ourselves at home. Because you really shouldn't be able to preach abroad what you're going to do if you aren't able to protect rights and justice and the effectiveness of protecting your own people. And I think, by and large, they did quite a good job of doing that domestically. We can talk about that at another point. I think in foreign policy, though, while they did rebuild alliances, well, I think that alliance with Europeans has been important, especially in light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I think while alliances with African countries, with Latin American countries, with Asian countries have been important, I think it's been overshadowed by two things, which is why the report card is very much incomplete. One is the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Not that they withdrew. Donald Trump had already locked them into withdrawing. They did it so quickly that it sold out Afghan people, just to be blunt. And then the second reason why you got it incomplete, even as you're covering this today, is that we have had one of the biggest mass killings in recent years, in which after Hamas's mass killing on October 2023, killing about 1,200 people, we've had more than 46,000 people killed in Gaza and almost 2 million, 90% of the population displaced. And the Biden administration is culpable. They did not act to limit that mass killing. And I think the stain of, for whatever reason, and I could give you a few why they did not act to curb that mass killing, I think that stain hangs over Biden's legacy for a long time to come.
Okay, so overall you're saying incomplete, but in the incomplete, would you say it did not make the grade?
No, I think he made the grade in some respects, and I think, and I'll give you an illustration. The Biden administration, in general, acted upon a world in which it's still important to cooperate and to work with others, and to not try to intimidate them, to not try to make them knuckle under to American power. I'm not defending all of American foreign policy. I've got a lot of criticisms of it, but there still was that attempt to engage with other countries and with other peoples. Donald Trump's Secretary of State, his nominee for Secretary of State yesterday, Marco Rubio, the former presidential candidate, in the middle of a congressional hearing, flat out said that the post-World War international order is obsolete. There's no reason for that type of cooperation that we had, whether it be through the United Nations, whether it be through European organizations, whether it be through the Organization of African States. Post-World International Order is obsolete. We're going to pursue an America First strategy. In other words, America leads, and if you don't follow, to hell with you. Now, out of those two approaches, I know which one I prefer, even if it was flawed, and that would be the Biden administration's approach.
Okay. And therefore, as we get on to news, so a very quick question. The broader question I think most people would want to know is, like, ultimately a president of the USA gets elected to serve the people of the USA. So, A, did he, in your opinion, serve his people effectively?
Yeah, by and large he did. And again, people will tend to forget, but if you go back 4 years, in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, the American economy was in chaos, led by a man who was trying to hold on to power through a coup attempt, the Capitol attack, because he was denying the results of the election. America was being sharply divided by that administration, which was just turning people against each other. 4 years later, the American economy is actually in pretty good shape, despite the fact that a lot of the facts didn't get out during the campaign, part of the reason why the Democrats lost. The American approach to health, to environmental issues, to transport issues, to infrastructure, in what has been some of the most significant legislation since the 1960s, has been significant. There has been an attempt to protect rights for minorities, for ethnic groups, for groups of different religions, different gender groups. So yeah, the intentions were there, and a lot of them have been fulfilled. And I think what's going to put that in a highlight, that this was an administration which did try to protect Americans, is going to be put into sharp relief, because you have a man named Donald Trump who his interest is not in the welfare of Americans. His interest is only in the welfare of himself.
And we're going to talk about the welfare of himself all of next week, I'm sure about it. So here's the last thing. We're on to news. So just a quick, short answer, right? If all of the above is what you've just said about Joe Biden, and yes, he served the people of the USA, why then did his party lose the election? Quick answer.
I mean, part of it was because Biden, of course, shouldn't have been running, and that damaged the campaign that he hung on so long. But in large part, and we'll take a separate hour sometime, it's because in a damaged American media environment, the facts about the economy, about immigration, about healthcare environment, it wasn't the facts that were being put out there. It was just simply what people supposedly felt. And what people felt about the economy and immigration was ultimately why they chose Trump.
Okay, what you feel is maybe more important than what actual is. Professor Scott Lucas, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. Talking about Joe Biden. On Monday, we'll talk about Donald Trump, I'm sure. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Ondela.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. A very good afternoon with the headlines. I'm Janelle Modaung. Some learners are still left out at Tikhane Secondary School in Hartebeesfontein near Klerksdorp Northwest. This as there are reports that there are no classrooms for grades 8 and 10. In other news, ArcelorMittal CEO Kobus Verster says apart from low demand, the business faces a number of challenges, which include electricity cost pressures, railway issues, tax competition from cheap imports, and employee compensation. This as 3,500 workers stand to lose their jobs. And Sports, Arts and Culture Minister Gayton McKenzie has urged South African artists and musicians to protect their legacies by obtaining legal representation. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM
guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N14 westbound has delays approaching the R512 Malibongwe Drive exit. Eskom Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Mood Street. In Bedfordview, the N3 southbound has a crash near Van Buren Road, and the N12 R24 westbound queuing on both routes towards Giluli's interchange. In KZN, the M4 has a crash reported at Lelusha. That's queuing traffic in both ways. The N3 westbound queuing towards Pavilion Shopping Centre exit. The N3 eastbound in Pinetown queuing towards Murray Hill Toll Plaza. And the M13 eastbound in Kloof has a truck crash reported near Maytime stores. Heavy traffic reported, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Cape Town, the M3 southbound slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. The M5 northbound slow moving towards the N1 Kuburg interchange. The N1 outbound is slow moving approaching Okavango Road. And Baden-Powell Drive in Khayelitsha has sand on the carriageway reported at Monwabisi, so proceed with care. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Tell you what, to me, there's nothing that pleases a team that's struggling, their fans, more than the potential the acquisition of a new player gives them, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we were talking about Kaizer Chiefs yesterday, and I've got an update because striker Tashreeq Morris is set to complete his medical at Kaizer Chiefs. This is ahead of a move to Naturena this month. It's a deal that the Glamour Boys have kept under the radar for some time now, having apparently opened talks with SuperSport United for the player's services as soon as the transfer window opened. Now, Chiefs have been in the market for a forward to boost their squad, with coach Nasruddin Nabi admitting recently that his current options of Ranga Shivaviro and Ashley Dupree need help. Now, Chiefs have also submitted an offer for Polokwane City winger Oswin Apollos, but the best news that the club have so far is that their Betway Premiership rivals from Tshwane have agreed to release Morris. In the meantime, Chiefs' first assistant coach Khalil Ben Yusuf says that recruiting and signing players at the club rests with the board, which is informed by many factors, including the available budget for transfer fees.
To be honest with you, Mr. Terra, with the board, with Coach Nabi, they make, let me say, in every day meeting to see the different profile of the players and to discuss. You know, to make recruitment is not depending only about ourselves. It's depending of the budget, it's depending of the player, it's depending of the team who play with this player. So there is a lot of thinking inside.
Well, sticking with the transfer news, Erling Haaland has signed a new 9.5-year contract with Manchester City. This new deal will see him at the club until 2034, and will see him making around £400,000, which is around 9.1 million rand per week, making him the club's highest earner. And it's also understood the contract has no release clauses in it, which means that any previous ones have been removed. Then Chicago Fire are in talks over surprise move to bring Brazil striker Neymar to Major League Soccer. The 32-year-old is out of contract with Al Hilal in the summer after 2 years in the Saudi Pro League. The Eastern Conference side would be able to make the deal financially, and negotiations are continuing with the Pro League and Neymar's representatives. However, from what we know, Neymar will not be registered for the second half of the Saudi season, and it is now up to the player to make a decision on where he wants to play. In rugby, Springbok captain Siya Kolisi says that he wouldn't make it to the 2027 World Cup had he continued to play in France. Kolisi joined Racing 92 after the 2023 World Cup, having told the French club that he would not play Test rugby again. However, he soon changed his mind and was back in the green and gold as the Boks won 11 out of 13 tests in 2024, and he also suffered some club form. His form suffered a bit of a dip, with Racing 92 President Jackie Rosanetti publicly criticizing his performances. Now, at the end of his first season in France, both parties agreed to terminate his 3-year contract with the Sharks, paying 18 million rand release fee to bring him back to Durban. Meanwhile, former Springbok winger Raymond Rule has called time on his rugby career. This is after an ongoing injury struggle. The 32-year-old, who has been on the books of French giants La Rochelle since 2020, has struggled to recover from a ruptured Achilles tendon that he suffered in training last August. Rule has played 7 tests for Springboks in 2017 and also played for the Junior Springboks in 2012. And he was born in Ghana but qualified through citizenships for the Springboks. In tennis, world number 1 Arina Sabalenka won a hot-fought straight sets victory over Denmark's Clara Tauson today to advance to the 4th round of the Australian Open. The two-time defending champion Sabalenka held off Tauson for 7-6 and 6-4 win to reach the weekend in Melbourne. Meanwhile, Naomi Osaka was forced out in the 3rd round due to injury, with Belinda Bencic leading the tie 7-6, and Novak Djokovic booked his spot in the 4th round after a 6-1, 6-4 and 6-4 victory over Tomasz Machac. And with that said, it is a wrap from my side for now.
And I see, by the way, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is now the coach of Besiktas. It just sort of came through now.
Yeah.
So
he's
the
still
former
keeping up with the
is
former
finally
Manchester
back.
United manager.
He's finally back getting a job. And just on that subject, not on that subject, on Amad Diallo, the Ivorian Man United player, getting a hat-trick last night.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting South African angle to it. I see Benny McCarthy has commented on his Instagram post saying, "Hi, bro," talking to Amad Diallo.
Yeah.
"How amazing are you doing now? I'm so proud of you."
Nice.
And maybe he'll come back and say, "Benny, you taught me how to score goals," because that would be just wonderful. Yeah, something along that line. All right, more sports in an hour.
Assurance, they understand my business. They are so good in terms of communication, which gives me confidence. It's a good decision that I've made to move to Assurance. I'm a winner. I want to be with the winners.
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
After a 1-0 draw in Morocco during the first 90 minutes, Masandawana and the leader are both hungry to wrap up the group campaign with a win. The South locks horns with the North. This is the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Witness the thrilling flavor of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus AS Farabat FC on Sunday, 19 January at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
By the way, somebody asked about the podcast on the show. Yes, of course, all the things we do are available as a podcast. Check it out, safm.co, including, if somebody's asked, the chat we had with George Galloway yesterday. Yeah, safm.co. Looking forward to the chat with Poppy Koza coming up after 5, the first of the Friday fireside chats for 2025. Really important conversation that I think we're going to have, but really great fun. So do listen out for that. And I'll take your calls. As you know, with some of the tweaking we've done, it's now 10 to 4, 10 to 5, 10 to 6. Although we won't do the 10 to 6 today because of the fireside chat. Normally that's where we'll take most of your, let's call it the audience engagement. Well, what about your engagement on this issue? The South African Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority announced yesterday that it has applied for the provisional liquidation of Ithala. That follows revelations by the repayment administrator that Ithala is technically and legally insolvent. Now, so that should be the end of the story, isn't it? I would think that there are certainly shareholders who would lose out and many others too. However, and there's a big however, the KZN Economic Development and Tourism Portfolio Committee, they are not happy with the decision. In fact, they oppose it. They are of the view that this position of provisional liquidation undermines the ongoing efforts to rescue Ithala and the broader development role that Ithala plays in the province. So lots of questions I would like to ask about this. Let's get the thoughts of Mafika Ndembele, who's the chairperson of the KZN legislature for the Economic Development and Tourism Portfolio Committee. Appreciate your time, Mafika. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Yes, good day to you and your listeners, and thank you for having us.
Thank you. So let's start with the first things first, that the Reserve Bank applying for provisional liquidation of Ithala. Did that come as a surprise to you? Were you caught unawares, or did you know that?
No, definitely it comes as a surprise. I will tell you why we are saying this, because look, Ithala had been experiencing challenges which were prolonged challenges. Then after that, there has been many interventions to rescue Ithala. If I were to cite that on the 30th of October last year, both the Portfolio Committee, the department, the minister, and the AG met to deal with some of the issues. Among other things, the issues of as it relates to the governance of Ithala. The indication and the report from the AG said there are significant improvement. But on top of that, the executive took a resolution to support Ithala, and they are different state entities in KwaZulu-Natal that want to support Ithala. If you look into the assets of Ithala, vis-a-vis its liquidity, Ithala has many solid assets. Now, what are the challenges that Ithala had been having, which I believe it should have not go this? One, the first challenge is in relation to the Bank Act of 1990, which, when it was then amended, excluded provincial and municipal entity from being fully fledged bank. And all along, Ithala had been operating with a sponsored license of ABSA. Part of the meetings that we have been having a bank that is not a tattoo bank, and there are various banks that are being engaged now, and there's been a willingness to then sponsor Ithala, and while at the same time dealing with this particular act, because even in the past, exemptions were given in this regard. So it comes as a surprise for us as a portfolio committee to say if there are lots of challenges. But when these challenges are being resolved, and when there is now an improvement, you all of a sudden apply for the liquidation of Ithala. But okay. What does... Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, if I just put it this way, why, the Reserve Bank are very clear that that Ithala is technically and legally insolvent, and I'm quoting them. That's the one hand, and that would be the basis of applying for the provisional liquidation. Without that, you can't do that. So clearly, if they know that, then they would be right, wouldn't they? Why would they then hold on to something that is technically and legally insolvent? That their debts are far higher than their assets.
No.
Or liabilities, rather.
No. That's not true. Let me tell you what has been the main challenges which we believe have led to that particular situation. Is that when the RA was appointed to come and rescue Ithala, it actually, instead of rescuing Ithala, came in and stopped all new accounts and all new deposits. But to prove that Ithala is resistant, Ithala did not even, when that was announced, lost a single customer. So it has to operate at that time and service the institutions or the clients that they already have. Now, they were losing. And then we started challenging that and said, if you are to rescue the institution, you do not come with the strategies to destroy it. So in our view, and on top of that, in terms of new clients, we are saying they are different institutions and entities that are under different government. We've been having the meetings with these entities so that they come in and sponsor Ithala. Immediately, that was a huge turnaround strategy in terms of the financial status of Ithala. That is why I'm saying what baffles us is that you have an institution that has been having challenges given. But now when proposals and plan and the backing of the government comes in, and then even the governance of that institution by AG, even from AG is improving. And then when now you rush into going to court and call for the dissolution of that institution. It's quite reckless because, you know, if you were to dissolve Itshala now, to sweep out that thing will cost you not less than 2 billion, which is the position that will not now bankrupt only Italy, will bankrupt the provincial government. But also, you are disadvantaging a lot of people in rural areas who have access to Italy.
Okay.
As,
Okay, so you're saying you believe it will actually bankrupt the entire KZN provincial government. It's that serious. That's the one point. You're also making the point that, in fact, there are reserves, and you believe that there's sort of enough liquidity or assets within Italy. So you're very clear, according to you, that their assets outweigh their liabilities, and therefore they are not insolvent, as has been discussed earlier on. Now, having said all of that, the decision has been made, right? What can you do next?
No. Today, as a portfolio chair, together with the portfolio chair of finance, Ubabumtanden Ndlungwane, we have jointly written to the standing committee of finance nationally so that they deal. But in the meantime, while they deal, because remember that the Prudential Authority reports to the National Standing Committee of Finance at national level. So there should be a particular amicable way and then a joint meeting with us so that we demonstrate this proposal. But in the meantime, and as a matter of agent, as a portfolio committee, we support the Department of Economic Development and Italy Board's action of taking legal action to interdict this reckless decision.
Okay, and just the last thing very, very quickly, I take it, of course, you're going to oppose this. Are you confident? I mean, because it is only a provisional liquidation application, and obviously that's the basis, that's provisional, so you can turn that around. Are you confident that it'll be turned around and that liquidation will not, the final one will not set in?
Look, we trust our organs of state, and we trust the judiciary system. We believe we will be able, given a chance, to put in forward a solid argument and then demonstrate to the court of law that this act alone will cause huge damage. Italy is not like VPS, as others have saying. Italy literally is an institution under ETA, but on top of that, Italy has other entities, and it has huge infrastructure.
And that's where we're going to leave it, Mafika Mdembele. Thank you so much for your time reflecting on the plight of, in this case, Italy.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The Oranges boys want to wrap up their group campaign on a winning note, while Stellies want to deliver a masterclass performance to triumph away from home. This is the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup. Experience the joy of African football. RSB Pekana FC versus Stellenbosch FC on Sunday, 19 January at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, I'm sure you have an opinion about that conversation with Mafika Mdembele regarding the future, the plight really of Italy. If you have an opinion, let us hear it. 086 000 2032 to call in. Now, in the meantime, lots of comment or commentary on the issue of the nurses.
Good afternoon, Ashraf It's a common factor that we have such extent a nurse fighting a patient. You can find that same extent applies in a cashier fighting a customer, a waitress fighting a client, Home Affairs official fighting someone who's applying for something. So it's a generalization thing. It's all about emotion. Prima by Protea Glen. Thanks for the great show, Ashraf.
Hi, Ashraf. I'm a registered nurse here in South Africa. We as nurses are referred to as professional nurses, the new terminology. We're supposed to be professional in all our interactions with our patients, no matter how difficult or obstreperous or rude or whatever they are. We are supposed to maintain a professional approach and calm in all circumstances. It's unacceptable for a nurse to just let go of her professionalism.
Well, I mean, you see, that is the point. You're getting these comments and sort of widespread examples of, in this case, nurses, where even though the nurses may be right in the first instant and the patients could be wrong, there's a sense of overreach where they just overextend themselves and literally feel they can do what they want. And the previous example from the previous call about regarding Home Affairs and others, in official capacities, almost like they've got a badge that says we do what we want. Somehow we must get that. We must absolutely get that right. Right. I think that there's a few more on those issues.
Ashraf, hello, this is Thabo Pumo from the Free State in Welcome. I recently went to a public clinic, government clinic, I think on Tuesday, and I must say the nurse that was helping me was extremely rude, extremely rude. I do get the stress that the nurses and doctors in public hospitals and public clinics work under. I do get that they work under pressure, but the way that they speak to us is really, really uncalled for. They are so rude and they make you feel as if you're nothing. So I saw the video and it really just made me upset because they're not doing us a favor. They are hired to help us. They are hired to care for us. They are medical professionals. So what that nurse did was, I think she was wrong, very wrong. Thank you.
Ashraf, I think the nurses forget that they are public servants, and they swore to an oath. And also, patients are not trained to de-escalate a situation. It's them, the nurses, who are trained to de-escalate a situation. So we shouldn't expect patients to act as professional as nurses do. Thank you.
Okay, well, interesting. I mean, in both cases, picking up the issue of the nurses being extremely rude and they forget they are public servants. So here's the point. Are they under pressure like nurses, like teachers, like others? They are hopelessly under pressure because of inevitably there's a resource problem. But can that ever allow them to certainly do and say as they want? Isn't that part of the training as well, to deal with the pressure? Because if they can't deal with the pressure of, let's call it a rude patient, how do they deal with other life-saving pressures?
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you, Mafuta? Hey, Ashraf, I think President Biden's administration had nothing much to talk about. His foreign policy was so confusing. He fueled the war in Ukraine. He caused confusion in Gaza. He made a forward step and made two steps backwards. I think even for us as Africans, we never benefited anything. His last ditch or attempt to talk about Africans was now when he came to Angola. That's all I can remember about his administration, Ashraf. I'm very sorry, but for your scale, I'll give him an E.
Why are you apologizing?
Afternoon, Ashraf, and the wonderful crew. I sometimes take things that Mbalula talks about for granted. I think he meant well when he said MK Party is a project, because its members are resigning one by one and those in the executive, because MK Party, it's a family business. A project, it's more like a song, because a song has a beginning and an ending. I thank you, Lord Monty.
Afternoon, Ashraf. It's almost like a circus. Whoa, it shows you what's happening in the hospitals here. And they are talking of national health insurance policies. Whoa. They should cut out the circus first before they think of that. Andrew in Butterworth.
Well, thanks for that, Andrew. Well, I mean, look, I don't know. I wouldn't call it a circus. I mean, they must be under immense pressure. But I think the point is, in terms of, let's say from a medical doctor point, the Hippocratic oath that you take, like there's a commitment to the patient. Can you ever dismiss a patient just because they're just being rude? Like, it's like, no, I'll just dismiss them. Like, I'm not interested in them. And, that the initial points, I mean, again, circus. And then other comments about Fikile Mbalula. Well, okay, what you're saying about him. And then Joe Biden, well, even Donald Trump, as he gets into power, South Africa or Africa is never their priority. Their priority is the USA. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying just accept that every decision they make will come through the prism of what suits America and the American people, and what will ensure that in this case they retain power 4 years down the line. Right, it's 4 o'clock. Let's get the news. Here's Daneo Matau.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories: a dozen arrested for murder of 5 in Durban, and Northwest School faces classroom shortage crisis. A very good afternoon. 12 people have been arrested in connection with the murders of 5 people at Inanda in Durban today. This morning, shocked community members discovered the bodies of 5 men who had been hacked to death and their bodies dumped in a local sports field. KwaZulu-Natal Police spokesperson Robert Nechunda says police are still looking for more suspects.
The team that have been put together quickly managed to find the people who could be behind the murders have been arrested in connection with those 5 murders, and they are detained. But for now, we can only say that we suspect that they are behind the murders. We are still out there looking for more, if there could be more involved, because what we've been made to believe now is that it was a group of people who went to those houses, kidnapped those victims, took them to the ground and killed them.
Moving to the northwest, some learners are still left out at Tigade Secondary School in Hartbeesfontein near Klerksdorp. This as there are reports that there are no classrooms for grades 8 and 10. The school has reportedly been going through renovations for the past 5 years. The construction company is said to be struggling to finish the renovations because the Department of Education fails to pay them on time. As a result, teaching and learning was disrupted at the school due to a protest by residents and learners. Ward Councillor under the Matlosana local municipality, Bagiso Mkela, says they need 10 classrooms and 13 teachers.
The kids are unable to get started with their academical year due to the reason that there is no sufficient classrooms. There is no teachers for this particular school. Now, Tigane Secondary School project is a project that is unfinished at the moment. Temporarily, we need about 10 classrooms. We need about 13 teachers who can start this particular academical year.
Meanwhile, Provincial Education spokesperson Mpatha Mulukwane says the issue of non-payment will be addressed soon.
The Department of Education, as a beneficiary of the project from the implementing agent, has agreed that it can only partially hand over the school after the relevant department has made the payment to the main contractor. It has been agreed that the issue of non-payment will be addressed by next week so that our learners can be accommodated in the school building.
In other news, ArcelorMittal CEO Kobus Verster says apart from low demand, the business faces a number of challenges, which include electricity cost pressures, railway issues, tax competition from cheap imports, and employee compensation. This as 3,500 workers stand to lose their jobs after ArcelorMittal announced plans to shut down its long steel production in Newcastle and Vanderbijlpark. Addressing the media after meeting with Employment and Labour Minister Nomakhosazana Myth in Vanderbijlpark, Verster says ArcelorMittal understands the dire consequences of its decision and is willing to work with government to find an interim solution.
We continue to advocate and request a level playing field. We want an enabling environment for manufacturing of steel. So those cost issues that we well publicized in terms of energy and rail, those need to be addressed. The unfairness in terms of the tax PPS system and the export tax, those need to be addressed. They are complicated issues, but they also there's a lot of people willing and able to work at it hard, and sometimes we can find interim solutions.
In the Northern Cape, the Kimberley Magistrates Court has granted a former acting magistrate at the court, Advocate Celeste Nameka, bail of 5,000 rand. Together with her father, who is a co-accused, they both face charges of murder, attempted murder, assault and discharging of a firearm. They've been denied bail. The two were allegedly involved in killing of 56-year-old Charmaine Anthony at Minerva Gardens in December last year following a domestic dispute. Anthony's son, who is Advocate Nameka's ex-boyfriend, was shot and wounded during the incident. The matter has been postponed to next month. Lastly, Sports, Arts and Culture Minister Gayton McKenzie has urged South African artists and musicians to protect their legacies by obtaining legal representation. McKenzie was speaking after visiting the families of the late musicians Winnie Khumalo and Victor Doc Shebeleza Bohopane. The two musicians, who died days apart last week, will be laid to rest at the Heroes Acre at West Park Cemetery on Saturday. McKenzie explains.
They say they should get a proper lawyer, make sure that they get their royalties. And I've learned in this department since I've become a minister, people represent people and people don't know they're being represented by people. The music industry is a dog-eat-dog industry. They need to get a lawyer and don't let friends of these run around and represent them.
Recapping the top story this hour, 12 people have been arrested in connection with the murders of 5 people at Inanda in Durban today. This morning, shock committee members discovered the bodies of 5 men who had been hacked to death and their bodies dumped in a local sports field. For SFM News, I'm Dino Mutaung. Headlines at 4:30.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Cape Town City players partly to blame for Eric Tinkler's sacking, and Proteas to approach Jamaica's match with a positive mentality. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N12 eastbound in Bedfordview has a stationary truck reported at the R24 highway split. The N3 southbound in Spruitview queuing towards Leondale Road exit, and the N1 northbound in Centurion has a crash reported at Brockfontein Interchange. In KZN, the N3 eastbound queuing towards Marion Hill Toll Plaza. The M4, there's a crash reported at Lelucia, which is queuing traffic in both directions. The N3 westbound queuing towards Pavilion Shopping Centre exit. The M13 eastbound in Kloof has a truck crash reported near Maytime stores, causing heavy traffic, so expect delays and diversions. And Old Main Road southbound in Hillcrest queuing towards the M13 highway. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Crombom Road exit. The N1 outbound slow moving as you approach Okavongo Road. The M3 both ways is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. Bakencroft Street outbound slow moving towards the elevated freeway, and Kloofnek Road westbound slow moving through Tamboerskloof. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
The Bees want to be all over the pitch and keep the 3 points on home ground.
It could be tied to Brentford. There's wishes in here. Brentford have got 5
want to emphasize that they will never walk alone, but with victory.
Lovely ball, Gakpo, goal! Brilliant as well, as ever, from Cody Gakpo.
This is the Premier League, striving for excellence. Experience the glittering encounter between Brentford FC and Liverpool FC on Saturday 18 January at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, lots more to talk about as we get into the National Pulse. I make the point often enough that the National Pulse is not a 3-hour show, as you know it, but it's a 24/7 reflection of what all of us feels that impacts the pulse of the nation. So what for you moves the National Pulse today? I can tell you the conversation we had earlier on regarding, the nurses and that relationship, or the connection or disconnection really between nurse and a patient that has gone viral, certainly has got your attention. Here's another comment.
Hi, Ashraf. It's very unfortunate what happened to the patient. And the nurse might really get fired for this. But if I were the nurse, I'll also sue for my mental health, because I tell you now, she handles more patients a day than what she's supposed to. So her mental health is not taken care of. The number per nurse, per day, per month is not accordingly. She's overworked, she's overburdened. So fine, they must fire her, and she must just not forget to sue. And she will win. Thanks.
Okay, how interesting is that? You're very confident about it. She must not forget to sue, and she will win. Very, very confident about that. Well, I understand there's obviously labor issues around that, so it's never that easy when people make comments and say, well, you like this and you like that, and that's how we're going to get you out. Believe me, to prove the case is a lot more difficult than just expressing an opinion, isn't it? In fact, we'll talk about other issues of cases, one around another video clip. Do I say thank goodness we have these video clips? A video clip of a man making a fish, really, drink beer went viral this week, and there's been an issue about that from the SPCA. We'll come to that in a moment. But another issue, and there's been many issues developing, regarding the issue of ArcelorMittal. We chatted about this before, that in fact they are closing down the one plant in Newcastle and their Gauteng facilities, and there's been a big issue about what happens with the jobs, right? So we understand now that the government departments, led in particular by the Department of Trade and Industry, are engaging ArcelorMittal to try and avert the closure of these companies. Well, I mean, what can they do? What can't they do? And why, perhaps, are they having this conversation now and not a long time ago? Maybe they've had it. Let's find out more with Thobeka Bakrai, the the Ministry of Employment and Labour spokesperson. Thobeka, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf Garda, and thank you, the listeners.
Thank you so much. Right, so seriously, I mean, first of all, the ArcelorMittal deciding they're going to close down certain facilities. How many jobs at risk?
Sorry, Ashraf, could you please repeat your question?
I was saying, how many jobs at risk, considering ArcelorMittal trying to shut down certain facilities, Newcastle and Gauteng in particular?
Oh, thanks for that. The jobs that are at risk, we're looking at 3,500. And then, but also with the ripple effect that could have an impact of 80 to 100,000 people down the line.
Okay, so I mean, clearly the impact that it would have on the country is horrific. I mean, we know that, and that is why it's important that all businesses grow and thrive and remain profitable. So this is a good example of just what happens when things go wrong, right? Now, the decision from ArcelorMittal to effectively shut down, let's just recap. I mean, what was it premised on? Why did they feel that they need to shut down?
So from what we gathered, and the minister also wanted to have a full briefing from them and understanding on what had been happening. And they've cited various reasons. For example, the high cost of transport and energy, the running cost over the years has had major impact on them. They've also cited that steel consumption has dropped by about 30%. So these are some of the issues that they've been having over time.
Okay, now, from your side then, from the Ministry of Employment, you want to engage with them to save these jobs, right? Do you have that power?
Well, Ashraf, Minister, when she comes in, we are employment and labor. So she's very concerned that 3,500, direct jobs would be lost. And we've come in to try and facilitate, see how we can help. So the minister has committed herself to provide financial, advisory, and policy-related support to ArcelorMittal.
Okay, and has this engagement taken place? What I'm trying to say is, in terms of, it's obvious the minister would want to retain jobs, but some may say that has this conversation has already started now, or has it happened and been ongoing for a long, long time? Or should it not have been going on for a long time, in fact?
Well, this conversation has been happening. In fact, government has, there is a task team led by the DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, Ministry. So there's like a whole task team that has been looking into this matter. We are coming in as a support. We are also coming in to say, look, what is it that employment and labor, what support can we provide, what resources can we also assist with to try and see how we also support the initiative that is already there, that government-wide initiative that is there to assist.
And what do you think? What are the interventions that you can make?
Well, I think for now, because today was our first initial meeting, we are looking at, the company has applied, for instance, for the TERS, the Temporary Employee and Employer Relief Scheme, which has been there since the COVID-19, since 2021. So they have applied for that, and we will then look at where the application is. They've given us the reference number, and we'll try and fast-check that. So that's just one of the interventions, and then we are looking at other areas of support. Minister did mention Productivity SA is also on board, so all our entities would be on board to provide the support. Productivity SA can provide support in terms of skills and training and various other initiatives that we are putting in place.
Now, ultimately, all businesses are there to make a profit. Clearly, there's a social impact that it has as well, but they clearly want to make a profit. It also means they employ lots of people, and those people derive benefit from that anyway, besides the service they actually provide. Now, within all of that, there's this tension sometimes an uneasy tension between the rights of workers and the rights of employers and the responsibilities within that, right? Let's just take a step back in terms of ArcelorMittal. What are they saying, considering the numbers you've mentioned, 3,000-4,000, potentially 100,000 impact, that may well help us to understand why they see the prevailing business conditions differently, that warrants them to feel that they may as well throw in the towel?
And Ashraf, ArcelorMittal is just as, in fact, for them, it's a very sensitive matter. They did emphatically state that for them, it's not just numbers of people. It's people that they've worked with for many years. So it's a very sensitive issue. It's something that they don't want to see happening. So hence now the minister has also requested that they halt any process. They had already commenced with consultative processes with the unions such as NUMSA and Solidarity, the Section 189 resettlement process. And the minister has requested that they hold any processes until we can also try and assist with a solution.
The other side of that is how far do you go in terms of support? Meaning, there's a sense that if, and of course I'm not suggesting let the jobs go, because we know how important it is to retain jobs, right? Every one of us will struggle if we don't have regular income. But there's a flip side of that, which is that if organizations or companies or businesses, in fact, are unprofitable and they feel that they're not operating well and they can't sustain jobs, then instead of supporting them in terms of, and maybe this is slightly different with regard to SOEs, for example, providing grants, giving them support, keeping them alive when they shouldn't be, isn't that a problematic issue and a line to follow versus to borrow another line, rather be more productive and support those organizations that are actually growing?
Well, I think we can actually do both, at the same time, try and support companies that do feel like they're going under. And we do that through the CCMA, through this temporary employer relief scheme called the TERS, where companies can actually apply for funding. We can then assist them for up to 12 months while we pay the salaries, while the company also continues with their production. So we do assist with relief, and that's what we're trying to offer as ArcelorMittal as well.
Okay.
Yes, I think the economic conditions right now can be, are a bit, they're not really at the place where we would like them. The economy is not really growing as fast as we'd like it to. Hence, there are so many role players that are part of the task team that are trying to look at ways of facilitating some kind of assistance and relief.
Well, it certainly is. So, here's the last thing, and it's not directly related to this conversation, but it has an impact, So I had a chat with the Minister of Health a few days ago regarding the many qualified doctors who can't get jobs. And bottom line is like saying, listen, if people are unemployed, they're unemployed. They're not the only ones. There's every single industry that are unemployed. We can't give them special treatment. And in fact, besides them applying, there's not much more we can do about it because we just don't have the budget. Now, I know he's talking about his department, but ultimately I'm talking about the principle of are we not in a serious problem where it's not just the issue of ArcelorMittal today or the Department of Health tomorrow, that ultimately this economy has shrunk so much, there's just mass unemployment, and which one do you, for example, decide to help, and which ones can you help and can't you help?
Well, Ashraf, that's why we assist people that also reach out to the department. So, for example, with the doctors, we've got a database, employment South Africa database. The department does also allocate funding for companies to employ unemployed South Africans. So there are various interventions that as a department that we've put in place, and everybody and every job is important to us to preserve. So what we would then advise anybody that is qualified, that is looking for a job, to reach out to the Department of Employment and Labour and find out how they can benefit from the services that we offer. And yes, that's the kind of guidance that we would then provide.
Well, I tell you what, it's a difficult job, and I hope you get that right. But thank you for your time. The spokesperson for the Ministry of Employment and Labour, that's Thobeka Maqai. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. I wonder what you make of that. To what degree do you try and save ArcelorMittal's position and save jobs in the process?
After a 1-0 draw in Morocco during the first 90 minutes, Masandawana and the leader are both hungry to wrap up the group campaign with a win. The South locks horns with the North. This is the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Witness the thrilling flavor of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus AS Farabat FC on Sunday, 19 January at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Be in it to win it by playing Powerball and Powerball Plus for 115 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Friday. You heard right. Play Powerball for an estimated 86 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 29 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
All right, as a rule, I mean, we may take calls before that, but certainly as a block now, it is around 10 to the hour. We will certainly do that with audience engagement. So feel free to connect. You can WhatsApp, you can text in the WhatsApp, you can send a voice note, you can also call in. 0614 104 107 is the WhatsApp number. And then do tweet as well if you're up to it on the social media pages. Follow SAFM Radio, follow me, Ashraf Garda, use the hashtag The National Pulse. Tell me what you think. What's your point on some of the biggest issues we've raised? Let's get to another issue around. We've had so many of these what is the story about video killed radio man? In this case here, video just all important in providing the type of evidence that people require. So we had the nurse issue. Here's another issue to consider. A 20-second video clip of a man making a fish, yes, a fish, drink beer went viral this week. And there were a few others as well. Now, there's big issues around that. Let's find out more about it with Jacques Peacock, who's the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals spokesperson. That's the SPCA, right? Jacques, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Right, you've obviously saw, heard, reacted to that 20-second video. Tell me more about it.
Indeed. We can now confirm that we will be laying criminal charges against the video. Against the individual seen in the video. We're seeing pouring an alcoholic beverage, as you said, suspected to be beer, down the mouth of a common carp. And in the video, he's seen holding the fish in the one hand while pouring the beverage into its mouth. And I think what is, further upsetting is that he's heard laughing and appears entertained throughout the video.
Well, I mean, I would think, it's a question probably you're asking and I'm asking too. What is it that motivates people like this? What motivates them in the first instant is the fact that these are the type of narratives that are bound to go viral because it has huge amusement factor, which certainly gets people thinking. Clearly, there's really no consideration for the ethics around this at all, isn't it?
Indeed. And we've since reached out to this individual, and he admitted to the act and stated that his motivation was fun. And the big concern that we have now is since the rise of social media platforms like TikTok, we have seen an alarming increase of videos depicting animal cruelty. And much of our inspectors' time and resources are now taken up by tracking and investigating the sources of such videos, instead of, for example, being out and working in indigenous areas.
So, in this case here, you've identified the person, you've engaged with the person, right?
Indeed, yes.
Okay, what's going to happen next? What can you do?
We are in the final stages of compiling a criminal docket, and we are going to pursue prosecution. So once the docket is finalized, the case will be opened with the South African Police Services, and he will face charges under the Animals Protection Act 71 of 1962. And the specific charges in terms of the Act relate to sections 2, sub 1, sub A, N, Q, and R. And those specific sections relate to any person who ill-treats or neglects any animal in terms of subsection N without any reasonable cause administering any poisonous or injurious drug or substance to any animal, which is, in this case, and then Q and R being in relation to being the owner of such animal.
I take it clearly the person in question, I mean, so he hasn't been formally charged and therefore is unnamed, but I mean, clearly that person would not want to be charged. I would take it as a given, right? In terms of your conversation with that person, I mean, is there anything that he or she has said in mitigation to say, hold it, come on, it was this, that, and the other, and I won't do it again? Is there anything you can tell us?
Well, I think that the disappointing thing was that it was very clear that the motivation for the video, as you said, was for fun and for purposes of entertainment. So, it it was premeditated and done for a specific purpose. It wasn't just an impromptu thing that happened. It was done, the video was made, and it was published for the purpose of gaining attraction on social media.
So you don't see much recourse there in terms of your conversation with that person besides going to court?
Well, we have a statutory obligation to, where there is flagrant and deliberate animal cruelty like this, to prosecute the matter, and we feel quite strongly about it.
Okay. I also understand that there's a separate video of a man holding 2 fish, and he makes these fish kiss and he smiles and laughs. So that's a separate video, separate person, right?
From what we can see, separate video, but it looks like to be the same person. Obviously, in terms of the APA, that would exclude the charge of administering the injurious or poisonous substance to the animal.
And again, I mean, what have you done in that case?
Well, because it forms part of the same investigation, essentially, it is considered, it came to our attention at exactly the same time. It looks to have happened at the same location, so it all forms part of the same matter.
Okay, a huge concern. I mean, what's your advice then to this national audience listening in, connected to the National Pulse, around the issues of animal cruelty and the urge to go viral?
Well, I think firstly we are heartened by the widespread condemnation of this individual's actions, which reflects the compassion of many South Africans for animals, including fish, who are often overlooked for their capacity for sentience and suffering. And secondly, we hope that this prosecution will serve as a stronger deterrent, discouraging individuals not only from publishing acts of animal cruelty as a form of entertainment, but also from committing them in the first place. It's sort of, when we were teenagers, you would say that's not cool, and that really is what this is. Firstly, you commit animal cruelty, you contravene the Animals Protection Act, but you do so in order to gain attraction on social media, and it is just quite nauseating.
Well, it's a big issue indeed. Jacques Peacock, thank you for your time. From the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, spokesperson there. This is just ridiculous how people do that. Thank you for your time, Jacques. 20-second video clip of a man making a fish drinking beer. And people think that's okay. Wow. For 30 years, the news headlines with Daneo.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. A very good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. 12 people have been arrested in connection with the murders of 5 people at Inanda in Durban today. This morning, shocked community members discovered the bodies of 5 men who had been hacked to death and their bodies dumped in a local sports field. In other news, the Free State MEC for Education, Dr. Mamiki Maboya, says despite the #1 sport that the province has now become used to, there are challenges that the sector is faced with. And the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved the Gaza ceasefire deal announced by the mediators earlier this week. The deal will now be presented to the full cabinet that is expected to endorse the agreement. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Eva Chiba.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in 4 ways, queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive exit. The N1 northbound in Midrand has a crash near Olifantsfontein Road, and the N1 northbound in Centurion, a crash reported at Brakfontein interchange. In KZN, on the N3 eastbound, queuing towards Marion Hill Toll Plaza. The N3 northbound in Howick has a crash reported at Maryvale, causing delays. The N2 northbound has a crash after Inanda Road, and the N3 westbound queuing towards Pavilion Shopping Centre exit. In Limpopo, on the R518, flooding reported at the Tamboti River Bridge. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Krumbum Road exit. The M7 checks Havel Drive southbound is queuing towards the R300 highway. The N1 outbound slow moving approaching Okavango Road, and the R304 northbound in Stellenbosch has a crash reported before Bottleray Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, let's so we talked about football transfers earlier. Let's now talk about actual matches. and it's called Mamelodi Sundowns.
Yeah, they are looking to end their CAF Champions League Group B campaign with the win over AS FAR Rabat at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium on Sunday. Sundowns are placed second in the group standings, having collected 8 points from 5 matches, and they are a point behind AS FAR and 3 points clear of third place Raja, with the South African champions just needing 1 point to book their spot in the quarterfinals, and a kickoff for that match is at 6 p.m. Meanwhile, Cape Town City midfielder Fortune Makaringa believes that the squad should own up to their role in coach Eric Tinkler being fired by the club. The Citizens sacked the former Bafana Bafana player after more than 3 years at the helm due to a string of poor results this season, and Makaringa admits that the team could have done better to avoid Tinkler's departure.
It's always up to us to own to that and be accountable for anything that happens within the club and all of those things, because at the end of the day we are the ones who are playing, and as much as the chants have been putting in the work, they've been, you can't falter effort, you can't falter their work ethic and everything else. It's just that you can never predict results. Results will always come however they come. The most important thing is to stick to what you've been doing well, and that's what Coach Machine came in and emphasized, giving that motivation and encouragement to continue doing what you've been doing right. Of course, he's always going to come in with his experience and his observation in terms of where he needs to adjust and stuff.
Moving on to cricket, the South African under-19 women are ready for the ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup with their opening match against New Zealand tomorrow. The team enters the tournament after a rain-affected official warm-up match against India, where they suffered a 6-wicket loss. This is due to or via the Doug Lewis method. They now set their eyes on the opening encounter tomorrow and hoping to start off on a high. In netball, Proteas head coach Jenny van Dijk says that she expects a winning mentality from the team. This is ahead of the Margaret Beckford Sunshine Series against Jamaica. The 3-match test series will take place from the 18th to the 25th of January at the National Indoor Sports Centre in Kingston. And van Dijk says that the general approach for the national team is to win matches despite the caliber of the opponent.
We are competitive enough to be able to grind and work towards a win at the end. By all means, we know it's not the easiest thing. It's easier said than done. This is a great side that we're playing against. But I've said this quite a few times. We will never move into a tournament, and we will never be touring anywhere, even if it's a away tour, and not. And the goal will not be for us to win. Our goal is always to go out there, put our best foot forward, and to work towards the win. So, yes, but it's also about the standard. The wins will always come if the standard of netball is how it should be. We've had quite a good look at the semi-finals that they played against Australia in the 2023 World Cup as well. And, you need to play a game, and your error rate needs to be really low in order to keep up. So if we can put that standard on court, we definitely have a chance to compete for a win.
In tennis, American 12th seed Tommy Paul won the last 10 games of the match to crush Spain's Roberto Baena 7-6, 6-2 and 6-love to progress to the 4th round of the Australian Open. Meanwhile, Britain's Jacob Fernley saw his encouraging Australian Open run come to an end against German second seed Alexander Zverev in the 3rd round. The 23-year-old went down 6-3, 6-4 and 6-4 in Melbourne. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for now.
Okay, so I was going to say, I'll ask you later on about what's your plans for the weekend. So we'll reserve that for later on.
Alrighty.
And perhaps you may want to raise something that you want to get off your chest when we talk again just now.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Defending champions Bayer Leverkusen want to stay close to the log leaders, while Borussia Mönchengladbach are navigating a path to the top 4. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch Bayer Leverkusen versus Borussia Mönchengladbach on Saturday, 18 January at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, let's get to the markets with Paswane Mpatlele, Senior Accounts Manager at Makwe Fund Managers. So, Paswane, also to reflect on local and global markets?
Definitely, Ashraf. Good afternoon and compliments to everyone. It's day 13 of 2025 in trading in the markets. Developments we've seen is that our trading partners from China, they reported a 5.4% year-on-year GDP growth, more than expected in quarter four, thanks to their stimulus efforts they've been making, improving their confidence around their consumers and businesses, spending and trade. Overall, we're seeing them meet that 5%. 2024 annual GDP growth target. This development has supported their commodity index in general, holding a bullish tail, and further support comes from those inflation concerns, Asher, that has been accelerating globally and can be expected next week from our data locally. We are sitting at a number of 3.3% from that number, and this can see the likes of the South African Reserve Bank therefore taking a forward neutral but with a cautious stance going forward. And on more on local developments, that Sasol was one of the best performers, sitting around 10%, as the CHO has announced the efforts to revive their chemical unit business to boost earnings and actually explore the option to list it. Forward-looking attention remains on those U.S. earnings coming through, and of course the presidential transition that will be taking place. That keeps the likes of the Bitcoin bullish, as it's going to be part of the executive orders on day one. It's sitting at $102,000. Gold remains bullish, of course, at $2,703 an ounce. Oil also at $80.86 a barrel. Looking into the general equities, U.S. stocks open positively. We've seen the likes of the Dow up 0.7, Nasdaq 1.5, S&P 0.8. In Europe, up across the board over 1%. Locally, we are up 1.1%. Financial supportive 1.5%. Industrials a percent. And our resource sector up 0.6. And when we look into the currency game, we see the rand against the dollar is at 1878. This is reflecting the pricing of rate cuts being reduced, as we've seen in the U.S., helping the rand at 1878, rand against the euro 1930, rand against the pound 2287.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And we certainly will connect next week, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Perfect. There we are. Have a great weekend. Right, we'll get to your calls pretty shortly, but we're going to talk about education next and the importance of teacher development right after this.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So everybody believes that teachers are important. Everybody believes they're probably the most important people in the world. In fact, I think Musi Maimani has been being this champion of education this last week. He's been talking about teachers need to be paid even on a par with medical doctors. I mean, that's how important, according to him, but that's his thoughts. The link to all of that is this important issue. Well, what is the importance of teacher development? And when we talk about teacher development, what are we meaning by just that? Sarah Koopman is with me, Head of Partnerships and Advocacy at the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship. Sarah, I appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
Hi there, Ashraf. Thank you so much for having me.
Much appreciated. Right. So, first of all, I mean, how important are teachers?
I would like to say that they are the most important profession, and often we forget that you can't have a doctor, an accountant, an engineer, or an author without someone who first taught them how to read, write, and count. And that is learning that is offered by teachers, is nurtured through teachers, right from the very early stages of a schooling career.
So if it's that important, and you're not the only person who says that, right, then is there appreciation on a par with your evaluation, number one, and then are they remunerated on a par with your evaluation and recognized, therefore, nationwide on that level?
I think the common misconception is that, teachers are only in it for the passion. And I think while a lot of them are, we misunderstand and don't appreciate the stress and the burden that comes with being a teacher in the classroom, particularly for newly qualified teachers as they transition from being students to being teachers themselves. And often, the challenges that teachers are facing are everything from a lack of resourcing, learner behavior problems, administrative problems, and the simple answer, I suppose, is that yes, teachers should be remunerated much more than they are, if only to keep them in the profession as well. We lose a lot of teachers, particularly in the first 5 years of their career, due to these pressures and the stress.
Which then means, and this leads on to the other issues about teacher development, there has to be a perception change, isn't it, in terms of how we see teachers?
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the work that organizations like ourselves at the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship are really trying to do and change the narrative around. And we are starting with teachers themselves and to offer them the nurturing and coaching, mentorship and support that will enable them to build that resilience within themselves so that they can, see it through and make it through those challenges and then become advocates in and of themselves for teaching as a profession and to really change that narrative that is a misconception about how critical teaching really is in the greater economic and social development of this country.
All right, so linked to that, certainly where you come in is this move or this drive towards, what we call teacher or leadership development within teachers, right? Tell me more about what you do as the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship.
So the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship is specifically a program for newly qualified teachers who have just graduated with their B.Ed or PGCE qualifications, and we work with them for those first 2 years of their career as newly qualified teachers, offering them sort of wraparound support that fosters this nurtured resilience in them, guides them, provides them with the community that they need. I think often the first few years of being a new teacher in a new school can be incredibly isolating and can be very stressful. And often the one thing that those teachers really need the most is a sense of community. So the work that we do at JGF really is focused on coaching primarily, where each of our newly qualified teachers has a teacher coach that they work with, as well as mentorship support. And then, as I said before, being able to tap into a community and start to build their professional networks as well, where they leverage each other for learner support or teaching material support, and really focusing around subject matter expertise as well, and building those professional learning communities with each other. And in the course of those 2 years, as they move through the JGF program, they are also able to develop real practical skills that go alongside the theoretical knowledge that they gained through their B.Ed or through their PGCE, and bring those skills to life through the various pedagogical competencies that they are required to have in the profession.
And this, what you're doing and offering for this new intake, is this very different to let's say, the type of teacher training programs that would take place within the Department of Basic Education?
No, this is really in parallel and in tandem to the work that is being done by the DBE with their National Teacher Induction Program. So the Department of Basic Education, in collaboration with the South African Council for Educators, have designed an induction program that includes mentorship, professional learning communities, and ongoing training from experts. And if I can reiterate what Minister Gwarube said in her National Senior Certificate results address on Tuesday, that teachers are the backbone of our education system. And this is a sentiment that is at the very core of our work at Jakes Gerwel Fellowship, where we know that the support for ongoing teacher development is a key component that allows learners to flourish.
Okay. Anything else you feel we need to know about the Academy, and maybe some details as well?
Sorry, Ashraf, I lost you there.
I was saying maybe we'd end with some details about finding out more about what the fellowship does,
absolutely.
right? But before that, is there any other important point that you think you'd like to raise?
Not to raise, but what I would like to say is a massive congratulations to the matric class of 2024. They have achieved the highest ever pass rate of 4 matrics that we've seen in South Africa's democracy. And with the specific focus on teachers, is to just say an extra congratulations to the teachers who have carried them through the COVID-19 pandemic, through lost learning time, and being able to see such incredible results. I think that has been a real hallmark of the role that a teacher plays in the ultimate flourishing of our learners. And then to find out more about the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship, I would invite everyone to visit our website, which is jgfellowship.org, and everything you need to know about our program is available there.
Absolutely. As far as the teachers are concerned, I think you're spot on. If you want to build I'd say there's a champion nation, you need to start with champion education, and that means building champion teachers. We absolutely have to get that right. It can't be any other way. Thank you for your time. Lots to consider, reflecting on what you've just said. Much appreciate your time. Sarah Quipman, Head of Partnerships and Advocacy at the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship. I think they're getting that right, don't you think? We'll get your calls after this.
I feel great, I feel nice. Also, what's the goal with coiling on the highest, the summer level? What are we? Generations the legacy. Kabisi's call for Kumo's side eye. That quasher of the drama context. It's Georgie Christmas vibes. It's the core on SABC Plus. Don't miss Generations the Legacy at 8 weekdays on SABC 1. Mzansi for sure.
Wekundu Wamsimbazi are playing for maximum points to finish top of Group A. But CSC strongly believe that their first position belongs to them. This is the top table clash of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup. Experience the delight of African football. Simba Sports Club versus CS Constantine. This Sunday, 19 January at 3 p.m. live on SABC 1. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Askis, my family man.
This F-bomb brought to you by Sanlam.
A 13th chick is most a 13th chick, nah? But stop going boss with the spending like the 14th and 15th chick is still coming in the mail. Is this your party, ne?
Finances is not a dirty word. Let's talk about it, Mzansi. Find out how at livewithconfidence.co.za. Sanlam. Sanlam Life is a licensed life insurer, financial services and registered credit provider.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
So let me remind you, being the first real business Friday of the year, we will now revert to what we do every Friday, which is have the fireside chat. So at 5 o'clock, we will move on and chat to Poppy Khoza, the Director of Civil Aviation at the South African Civil Aviation Authority. Lots to consider, lots to talk about in that conversation. Please listen to it. There's a big leadership angle that will come and emerge from that conversation, okay? So that comes up then. Let's, however, pick up on what you think is moving the national pulse today. Stanley in Pretoria, hi.
How are you?
I'm good indeed, Stanley. Go for it.
I want to talk about this thing of kids and placement, especially in Gauteng. You know, those people, what they're doing is that they don't consider us parents or even the kids. You know, we've got two kids who are doing grade 1 who are supposed to be placed around Block LS because there's a school there. But we know they place them in Block G, which is 2 taxis to get there. And I can't even, where I applied for them, I wanted them because I knew I could just take my wheelchair and go with them and drop them there after school. Because safety, remember, it's not safe for young kids to leave them go alone. But now they're taking them to Social Google Block G, Block F. And when I try to appeal, they don't take us serious. And now, if they say, no, you must organize transport for 1 kid is 800. So for now, I'm going to have to wait. The kids are not going to go to school until they get their child support grant so that they can go to school because of their placement is far. But there's a school next to me. I can even go with my wheelchair, then drop them and then come back. And after school, go and fetch them, then they can come back with me. But they take them two taxis from where I live to go to the other school. And they're grade 1. They are only 6 years old. Just imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge issue. I mean, and that's why there's lots of frustration, isn't it, around it, Stanley?
It's frustrating because it's not safe to say they can go with the taxis on their own. They need transport, special transport. Those special transport, those transports are expensive. But there's a school here, and I've asked them, I've got a disability that I'm in a wheelchair, so I need my kids to be at least closer, where I'll be able, in the morning, I can take my wheelchair, go with them and drop them at the school and come back later until they they made friends that they can come back home with, but they don't listen. They just take the kids and place them far. Because that's what's frustrating, because they must check the radius. They say they must apply 30 kilometers radius. But that school is more than, I think, 5 kilos. That school is not 10 kilos because it's far.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. Right. Let's leave it at that. Thanks for your call. Right. Let's get to further comments, mainly via WhatsApp.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I'd just like to know about the ArcelorMittal story. Aren't we being reactive now? Because this took a few years in the making, with the government not able to police stolen copper and metal, etc. And in that way, they just stopped all scrap metal business. And I think they stopped it for quite some time. So wasn't that all in government interference in the industry, where there's a big push for not using our own resources and not sending it abroad to come back as microwaves, etc. And the interference with ArcelorMittal steel and all that, was that part of the making? Kindly enlighten me. Thank you.
Ashraf, ArcelorMittal, the former ISCO, is like the telecom, post office, the railway, which was nicknamed Transnet. You name them, SAA, Eskom, and so on. They were being managed so properly under the Boers. But since the ANC took over, everything is falling apart. The ANC people with empty heads, they don't know what to do with this beautiful country. They destroyed everything, even what they inherited in good condition from the hands of the Boers. The ANC has just trashed anything and everything like an animal. It's so tragic. Mutibang. Thank you.
Okay, that is your opinion. Let's get and of course I'm sure others will concur or disagree with you. Right, let's get another comment.
Ashraf, good afternoon, man. This is Flores from the beautiful Western Cape. Speaking about videos, people making videos when funny things or serious things or absolutely important things are happening. Yeah, it's wonderful because that can serve as proof in a court of law, I imagine. But anyways, talking about a guy who made a fish drink alcohol, here in the town where I live, unfortunately for a video, the SPCA could intervene. A young man smoking dacha, having a snake in a jar, glass jar, blowing these fumes into this jar. I don't know what happened to that snake, but yeah, how can people be so stupid? Yeah, and then people say that dacha makes you clever. Have a good job, bye-bye.
Okay, there we are. Right, let's get another call. Eunice wants to comment about Joe Biden. Eunice, go for it.
Yeah, hi there, Ashraf. Look, Joe Biden, what legacy does he leave? If you look at the ceasefire thing with between Hamas and the Israelis, he's taking credit for it. But take a step back and look at the ceasefire agreement of May the 27th. It's almost the same agreement that was signed on May 27th. Why didn't Joe Biden, Blinken, and Netanyahu enforce it then? 8 months later, and thousands more have died. So Joe Biden leaves no legacy for me, like he's known in the States as Genocide Joe, Genocide Joe. That's the legacy he leaves.
Okay.
He's just signed over $8 billion military aid back to Israel.
Well, I hear you. There's been a lot of criticism about him even yesterday as well as Blinken. We know that yesterday, saying, what have you done? What about 6 or 8 months ago or even longer? What do you think? What has changed to move from him not signing it to actually now moving on in the last days of his leadership and the incumbent and the new man coming in?
Well, he could have enforced that 8 months ago. And by the way, with the new ceasefire thing that's come through on Wednesday, Israel is going crazy. In 3 days, they've slaughtered over 112 people, they're mostly women and children. So, and I'd read to see from today up to Sunday what will happen then. And by the way, I must say, yesterday you had George Galloway on. That was a breath of fresh air. George makes for terrific radio, and maybe you should have him more often on your show.
Well, when we can get him, we certainly will try and do that. If people have missed that, thanks for that, Eunice. Catch the podcast, safm.co.za on George Galloway. In fact, I've tweeted about it as well. You can certainly check it out too. Right, let's see. We're going to have Poppy Khoza, remember, after 5 o'clock. Let's see if we can get further comments.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. So most of the things that ArcelorMittal is mentioning, they are very, very factual. The electricity cost is very expensive. Us as the residents, we are already crying about the cost of electricity. So imagine the big companies, how much are they losing on electricity cost? And again, even if the government can try to help the company, still this year or next year they're still going to increase the cost of electricity and other things. So the companies are still going to struggle like us as the poor people on the ground. Thanks, Ashraf.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. You know, people in South Africa are always victims. They are always going to lose jobs because the government has allowed the import of cheap Chinese goods. The Chinese, they make a lot of money because they don't even pay workers a living wage, and they don't even respect the human rights of their workers. As a result, South Africans will continue to suffer due to cheap imports from China. I'm Bafalo Kumalo in Memelo.
Well, you see, that is, I won't comment on it, there's not much time, but there is the conundrum. There's two quick thoughts on the nurses.
Afternoon, Ashraf. That issue between a nurse and the patient there is no justice there. We don't know what transpired. We must see the whole story, not that part, only that part. No. We want to know what really transpired there before we comment. That will be justice to both the nurse and the patient. Must not choose sides. We don't know what happened there. Attitude. We don't know what happened there. I'm from Brixton.
Yeah, but who's choosing sides? In fact, from the labor union side, they're already saying that this is not acceptable. But there would also be an investigation, and that will confirm what you just said. Look at the bigger picture into all of that as well. Right. We're gonna chat, by the way, to Poppy Khoza as well. And let me just tell you that we'll speak to Max Blumenthal, who was the person thrown out during that Blinken final press briefing. Remember, we chatted, I alluded to that when I spoke to Eunice, right? So we'll chat to him on Monday. Listen out for that as we reflect on as well that ceasefire and when it finally kicks in. So lots to consider on Monday's edition of the National Pulse. So Poppy Khoza comes up in a moment. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories at 5. Arrest made in gruesome Durban murders, and the Israeli Security Cabinet approves the Gaza ceasefire deal. Good afternoon, I'm Eva Chipa. 12 people have been arrested in connection with the 5 murders of people at Inanda in Durban today. This morning, shocked community members discovered the bodies of 5 men who had been hacked to death and their bodies dumped in a local sports field. KZN police spokesperson Robert Nechunda says police are still looking for more suspects.
The team that have been put together quickly managed to find the people who could be behind the murders have been arrested in connection with those 5 murders and they are detained. But for now, we can only say that we suspect that they are behind the murders. We are still out there looking for more, if there could be more involved. Because what we've been made to believe now is that it was a group of people who went to those houses, kidnapped those victims, took them to the ground and killed them.
The case against a female police officer has been postponed to next week, Wednesday, for formal bail application in the East London Magistrate Court in the Eastern Cape. Ndombekaya August faces a charge of theft following the robbery of 1.3 million rand at the East London Crime Intelligence Offices. Eastern Cape Hawks spokesperson Avela Mfumba explains.
The arrest is a result of a meticulous investigation conducted by the Hawks. And what is so fascinating about this is that the Hawks have managed to crack the case within 5 days. And it clearly tells you that the Hawks are always hard at work. And what is also worth noting is that the suspect, of which Ndobekaya, happens to be a member of the South African Police Service. And that tells you clearly that the Hawks, they do uphold the rule of law without fear or favor.
The Free State MEC for Education, Dr. Mamiki Muboya, says despite the number one spot that the province has now become used to, there are challenges that the sector is faced with. Speaking at her department's function held at the Central University of Technology in Bloemfontein, the MEC says the pass rate of just over 80% mark in African home languages, even to the top achieving learners, is worrying.
We are quite cognizant of the fact that we do have some challenges. The first one is the participation of our learners in what we call gateway subjects, especially in mathematics. We would want to see more learners participating in mathematics or technical mathematics. And the second one is the performance of our learners in African home languages, where our performance is not good at all. And this is something that we really have to focus on.
In other news, King Khoisan SA has been transferred to a hospital in Middelburg in the Eastern Cape, where he is recovering from a car crash. The crash that happened last week on the N9 near Colesberg in the Northern Cape claimed the life of his wife, Queen Khoisan. The couple, along with two others, were on their way from their home in Gqeberha to the Union Buildings, where King Khoisan SA was facing an eviction order. Khoi and Son activist Christian Martins says Queen Khoisan will be buried in Gqeberha on the 1st of February.
On the question about the well-being of King Khoisan SA, that he was transferred from Colesberg Hospital to Middelburg Hospital. The funeral of the late Queen Cynthia Trichardt will be held at Ebenezer International Church of Pastor Neville Goldman in Algoa Park, Gqeberha. The family are asking those that want to contribute towards the funeral to contact Christian Martin on 082 309 2849.
Now to KZN, where two pedestrians have been killed in a crash involving a truck and a car on the N3 northbound between Maryvale and Midmar in the Midlands. Midlands Emergency Medical Services say upon arrival, two pedestrians were declared dead on the scene after sustaining fatal injuries from being struck by the car and the truck. Two people from the car were also injured. Motorists are urged to exercise caution when approaching the area. And lastly, looking further afield, the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved the Gaza ceasefire deal announced by the mediators earlier this week. The deal will now be presented to the full cabinet that is expected to endorse the agreement. Sharon Bryce Peace has more.
The positive movement by Israel's government all but assures that the deal will now move to the implementation phase and see a staggered release of hostages in return for Palestinian prisoners, a withdrawal of Israel's military to the outskirts of Gaza, a surge in humanitarian aid into the enclave, and the ability for Palestinians to return to the remains of their homes, likely destroyed after 15 months of war.
Recapping the top story at 5, 12 people have been arrested in connection with the murders of 5 people at Inanda in Durban today. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, good afternoon. I'm Eva Chipa.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Lions boosted by the return of Venter and Van Wyk and Sundowns ICAF Champions League qualification in terms of the quarterfinals. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Witkoppen Road westbound in Magaliesig is slow moving towards Main Road. In Bedfordview, the N12 R24 westbound queuing on both routes towards Gillilees interchange. And the N12 eastbound has a stationary truck at the R24 highway split. In Midrand, the N1 northbound, a crash reported near Olifantsfontein Road, and the N1 southbound, a crash reported at Buccleuch interchange. In KZN, the N3 northbound pedestrian crash reported at Maryvale. The N3 westbound stationary truck reported just before Cliffdale. The M13 westbound is queuing towards the Kassir Road exit. The N2 northbound has a crash after Inanda Road, and the N2 southbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. In Cape Town, on the M5 southbound, grass fire reported near Racecourse Road. The M7 checks Harville Drive southbound queuing towards the R300 highway. The R43 is queuing through Hermanus, and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
After a 0-all draw at Orlando in December, the Northern and Southern African Giants meet again. The Red Devils want to create a happy mood for their fans, but the Buccaneers want to destroy the Pyramids by collecting maximum points. This is the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Witness the incredible flavor of African football. Al Ahly Sporting Club versus Orlando Pirates FC on Saturday, 18 January at 6 p.m. live on SABC2. Also available everywhere, for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, so you know the story, regarding the podcasts of just about all the interviews we do. They're all available. Go to safm.co.za and you can listen to it, share it, comment, use it at the base of conversations all throughout the weekend. Wonderful if you do just that. Right, so every Friday, normally, we go into what is called Friday Fireside Chat mode, where we speak to a person who, we think was great and inspires us in many ways and has strong views on many issues. And we chat for about an hour or so, and that is what we normally do. Of course, we stopped that over the holiday period because I was away and so were everybody else. But today we get back into Fireside Chat mode, and really it's a privilege for me to chat to have as part of my Fireside Connection Poppy Koza, because I've chatted on many other platforms, but it's been a long, long time, Poppy, and wonderful that we can connect here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and compliments of the new year. It's good to chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
With you again.
Well,
yes.
Well, normally at this time of the year, appreciate the compliments, and the same for you too. But the common thing is so where did you go for the holidays? It's not too late for me to ask you that, do I?
Yeah, well, I was at home. Didn't go anywhere. I literally, stayed with my family, my very immediate family, my husband and the kids. And we, just reconnected and spend some quality time together because the year can be very busy. So we decided to reward ourselves by just sticking with each other and be at home.
And is that normal for you, wanting to be at home over the holiday period, or like many others, and I know it's expensive, for many others who can afford it, they make a plan and they want to travel abroad. Some people go to their local, family communities, like, I'm thinking about KZN or Transkei. So many people do that type of thing. What would be your norm?
And so because of the kind of work that I do, and of course I work for the South African Civil Aviation Authority, it does take me away from home quite often, and it means that I would ordinarily spend less time with my family. Well, not very less time, but quite often I would be in and out on official business, as the regulatory authority, has demands which somehow compete with my family life. So when we have an opportunity to be at home, just to connect and get to understand, excuse me, how things are going with my kids and reconnect with my husband as well, just to have that quiet quality time without, anyone, just us. So because of the nature of my work, it's not really a norm. That I would get to spend the quality time with my family. So I was very appreciating.
I understand that,
too.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about your work at the Civil Aviation Authority in just a second, but I mean, do you ever find yourself, and it almost sounds contradictory, do you ever get tired of traveling? Like in a plane, that is, yeah.
I think, it's second nature to me now, because my very first job was in aviation. I worked for an airline, the South African Airways, and it also involved a lot of traveling. So that's literally the only life I know, because I've never worked outside of the aviation sector. And traveling has really been an integral part of, my growing up and particularly in my career, and this is the life I know. So I still enjoy it. Sometimes it can be tiring, particularly because now I have a family, I have kids, and sometimes my kids want mommy around. But I try to, try as much as possible to integrate my work life with my family life.
All right, let's talk about
But of course, other things suffer because, my social life does take a bit of a knock.
Understandably, I think we've been trying to have a serious coffee chat for a long time. So hopefully a real catch up. And when you had the moment, please let me know. It would be great to do that. Let's talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're the director of what I'm saying, SACA, the South African Civil Aviation Authority, right? What does that entail?
Right.
I mean, what does Poppy Khoza do?
So. The Director of Civil Aviation is an equivalent of a Chief Executive Officer. And literally it's to ensure that we have an institution that is working, that delivers on its mandate through setting of the strategy, mobilizing all resources, human, financial, but also to ensure that the mandate of the authority in terms of ensuring that our skies are safe is carried out with the care that it deserves, particularly because it's an environment, of course, that is quite critical for socio-economic development of any country, but also the issues of aviation safety and security of the passengers is extremely key. And therefore, on a daily basis, it is really to ensure that, we keep the sky safe. Of course, working with a great team of professionals who assist me on a daily basis to make sure that we do that. So the last thing that we want, because I see you are a globetrotter yourself, that when you travel, you must not worry about whether you will land safely at your destination. So typically that is what the South African Civil Aviation Authority does. it is really to ensure that you are safe as you fly, and that the pilots who fly you are adequately licensed, they are qualified, and they do what is expected. So it's quite a complex environment with multiple careers and professions, and to navigate through all of them to make sure that everyone is doing what they need to do, from aircraft maintenance to pilot licensing to airport licensing, and a myriad of issues, ensuring that the whole system works such that the safety of the passengers and crew is always preserved.
Okay.
And I think as the authority, we've done well, considering the record of the safety of our country.
Well, am I right in saying that South African, and I hope this is going to continue, that South Africa is amongst the safest countries in the world when it comes to, our airwaves, so to speak, or the airspace, right? Will you confirm that for me?
Can confirm it because there's evidence available that, in that respect. We haven't had an aircraft accident that has claimed so many lives of people on the South African soil involving a passenger airliner. And this is the record that we want to preserve. Of course, in the past few weeks, in fact, we saw a spate of accidents happening in other regions. And as a regulatory authority, of course, we'll be concerned because, an accident is an accident. It doesn't announce. But what it tells us is that there's no room for us to think that because we have a good safety record and therefore we need to relax and think that, the similar accidents will never happen in our country. So we cannot let our guard down. We always have to ensure that we do what is expected of us on a daily basis and hold the operators, the airlines, the airports, and everyone who is in the aviation business accountable for their actions. So that is in the main what we try to do on a daily basis.
Well, it's interesting you
which
mentioned.
Of course,
you mentioned the globe trotting. I mean, you're right. I've been very privileged in the last few months, going to going to Canada, going to London, and then of course going to Oman now, and then some of it is strictly work for speaking arrangements. Others are straight holiday. And you're right. I mean, the point that you made earlier on, when we were in Oman, that's the time we heard about these other plane crashes and skiddings of on the runway. And there's no doubt that it has an impact on your psyche. You're flying tomorrow. It's in your mind, right? Which then gets me thinking about yourself as the regulator, right? So obviously, the regulator, you want to be safe, but and the important part will be preventative rather than reactive, right? How do you get that right? I mean, maybe just give us a typical example of how you go about doing your work.
So our work is clearly cut out. We derive our mandate firstly from the Civil Aviation Act, which is an act of Parliament. We are an establishment of government, public entity. We report to the Department of Transport and to the Ministry of Transport. And we have a UN body that prescribes standards and recommended practices. And we always have to ensure that those standards and recommended practices are complied with, meaning that we have to ensure that there are adequate regulations. We do our, surveillance. We give, permits, licenses, and approvals to those who are deserving, and we try as much as possible not to have, any elements that could undermine and or compromise that which we do on a daily basis in terms of ensuring that aviation safety is upheld. And in the main, it's really about doing the right thing all the time. And as we do all those things every day, we are also subjected to audits by
Of course
the
you do.
International Civil
All right,
Aviation
just put that
Organization.
audit conversation on pause. We'll pick it up in a moment. By the way, if you want to engage with Poppy Khoza, you can do that. 086 000 2032. Maybe time for 3 calls or voice notes. 0614 104 107. You know her. You like her, you admire her. What would you like to tell her or ask her? Well, here's your opportunity. She's my guest, Poppy Khoza, on the Fireside Chat here on the National Pulse.
I feel great, I feel nice.
Kasho, what's the go? We're going on the highest, the summer level. What's the qua? It's the Nandi sessions with Mr. Shodem. It's the fa of live music. It's the go on SABC Plus. Catch the JR Feel Good sessions at 6 Fridays only on SABC 1. Mzansi for sure.
After a 1-0 draw in Morocco during the first 90 minutes, Masandawana and the leader are both hungry to wrap up the group campaign with a win. The South locks horns with the North. This is the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Witness the thrilling flavor of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus AS Farabat FC on Sunday, 19 January at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Chatting to Poppy Khoza. She's the director of the South African Civil Aviation Authority, but really it's a Friday fireside chat and we talk about all different things. So Poppy, I'm going to put the work of civil aviation just on hold at the moment, right, and maybe talk about other things. You did say that you've been involved in some way in the airline industry since day one, but tell me about your journey. I mean, where's home for you? Where did you come from, and what the decisions you've taken to get onto this journey?
So my journey started more than 20 years ago. Aviation was, I didn't know much about aviation. Coming from a small town in Esibongile, Dundee, you wouldn't really see pilots, aircraft. There was a small aerodrome, but you would, stand very far and just try to picture what could be happening there. So it wasn't really, a sector that I was exposed to and or knew about. It was upon finishing matric and going to tertiary to further my studies, and I came across a course a program, travel and tourism. At the time.
Oh, the glamour of tourism. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yes. So I actually thought travel tourism, this sounds beautiful. Why wouldn't I be interested? And they still had, the space, and I decided with a group of friends to go and enroll. So we were accepted. That's how I got to learn about aviation. So immediately after, completing that course, I was then employed by South African Airways as a customer service agent. At the check-in counters, I was responsible for checking passengers in and make sure that client needs are taken care of and so on. And little did I know that, it's a sector that I would grow to love so much, to an extent that I then became curious and wanted to, further, my studies towards, the core of aviation. In as much as there were very limited at the time prospects of getting into management at the time, because it was just after the dawn of democracy and things were changing. But for some reasons, aviation was not one of those sectors that was, adapting to change and transformation. So it was very difficult, in fact, to rise up. But when you want something so bad, you try your level best to do what you have to do in terms of pushing yourself, being resilient, and not allowing people to box you and tell you what you cannot do, especially if you know that this is something that I can do.
Absolutely,
So I pursued and pushed through, and ended up in management at SAA. And after SAA, I then decided to join the regulatory authority as a senior manager, who was responsible for airlines and airports security. Aviation security was a big thing at the time, so I took an interest. It was after 9/11, and of course, the whole world was on guard in terms of what had happened, and putting the systems together and make sure that we safeguard our airspaces and make sure that there was no repeat of 9/11 and so on. So it just interested me so much to an extent that I decided this is where I want to be. And I grew within the ranks, ended up in the executive management. And yes, about 12 years ago, I was then appointed to the position of the CEO, Director of Civil Aviation.
And I mean,
it used to be called the Commissioner before, but the titles have changed, and it's soon to go back to being Commissioner of Civil Aviation. So, by the grace of God, I'm still here.
And you've won many accolades along the way. I mean, both local and global in terms of awards and acknowledgements. I mean, tell us about some of that.
So I've been extremely humbled, to be honest, because when you do what you love and what you're passionate about, you don't do it for accolades and awards and so on. But it is really true that as you do what you love, someone somewhere is watching. And I think, through the work and the diligence and the resilience and the passion behind it, the dedication, I then got recognized for a host of things, including, being awarded as the first woman by the Flight Safety Foundation in Washington to receive a Gloria Heath Award, which really recognizes, women who are doing, I would say good things in leadership. I'm still humbled about that. And just recently, I was also awarded by the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, which is responsible for airlines globally, for championing diversity and inclusion. Of course, having the profile of the regulatory authority with so many women, 51% of our makeup is women, 50% of the executive are women, and just the general diversity of the institution, sitting at about 89% African, Black, and of course 11% white professionals and counterparts.
Well, I mean, those are fascinating numbers. Yeah, absolutely. You wanted to say something very quickly, before we go to news?
Yes, so the diversity and inclusion is particularly very important in our country, given our history. And what is important is that anyone who aspires to be in this profession must be given a fair chance. And I think as a regulatory authority, we've demonstrated that, in a country such as ours, diversity and inclusion is indeed possible.
And you can do it all and win at the same time, which is exactly the way I see you doing your work, Poppy Khoza. More to come from you. Maybe a chance to take one or two calls. We'll do that shortly. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30. Here's Eva Chipa.
Thanks, Asha, for your news making headlines for this hour. Police have arrested a 35-year-old man who was found with over 10 million images and videos of child pornography at his residence in Midrand, north of Johannesburg. Police say the man was identified through an international law agency and was also found in possession of drugs. In other news, 12 suspects have been arrested in connection with the murders of 5 people in Inanda in Durban earlier today. And lastly, the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved the Gaza ceasefire deal announced by the mediators earlier this week. I'll be back at the top of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still a bit slow getting out
starting off in
of the Midrand area today, but Clue up towards Olifantsfontein is busy. Also, if you're driving around Hillcrest and the Key Ridge area, lots of pressure out there today. There's this truck that overturned near Maytime. The M13 from Hillcrest to Kloof is closed, so really big backlogs coming out of the Hillcrest area. You've also got a lot of that traffic jamming up around Cassia and then down on the N3 towards Marion Hill Plaza. And then at the same time, if you're going the other way, the usual breakdown at Cliffdale in the roadworks. So really big heavy traffic from Key Ridge on your way through to Peter Maritzburg today. Just outside Cape Town, a busy run on the weekend is the Hermanus area. Now there's a fire in the Horston area between Hermanus and Horston on that R43. So there's some traffic control and road closures as required. So just expect some disruption. And if you're travelling away for the weekend, roadworks between Botrofia and Caledon are in place, and lots of roadworks but either side of Albertinia on that section of the M2. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
All right, what does the president talk about on the last sports bulletin before a sporting weekend to me?
Well, I start off with rugby this hour, where the Emirates Lions have been boosted by the return of flanker Ruan Venter and Hanko van Wyk for their must-win EPCR Challenge Cup match against the Dragons. The Lions need to win to progress to the round of 16, and they are level on points with the Dragons. There are several other changes to the side, with Van Wyk replacing Enrich Cornea, while Venter replaces Izan. Meanwhile, former Springbok winger Raymond Roulet has called time on his rugby career after an ongoing injury struggle. The 32-year-old, who has been on the books of French giants La Rochelle since 2020, has struggled to recover from a ruptured Achilles tendon that he suffered in training last August. Now, Roulet played 7 tests for the Springboks in 2017 and also played for the junior Springboks in 2012. He was born in Ghana but qualified through citizenships for the Springboks. Then in cricket, the South African under-19 women are ready for the ICC under-19 Women's T20 World Cup, with their opening match set against New Zealand tomorrow. The team enters the tournament after a rain-affected official warm-up match against India, where they suffered a 6-wicket loss via the Doug Lewis method, and they're looking to bounce back this time around in their first match against New Zealand of this T20 World Cup. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns will be looking to end their CAF Champions League Group B campaign with the win over ASFAR Rabat at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium on Sunday. Sundowns are placed second in the group standings, having collected 8 points from 5 matches. They are a point behind leaders ASFAR and 3 points clear of third place Raja, with the South African champions needing just a point to book their spot in the quarterfinals, and kickoff for that match is at 6 p.m. In transfer news, Erling Haaland has signed a new 9.5-year contract with Manchester City. This new deal will see him at the club until 2034, and will see him making £400,000 per week, making him the club's highest earner. It's also understood that the contract has no release clauses in it, which means that any previous ones have been removed. Meanwhile, Chicago Fire are in talks over a surprise move to bring Brazil striker Neymar to Major League Soccer. The 32-year-old is out of contract with Al Hilal in the summer after 2 years in the Saudi Pro League. Now, the Eastern Conference side would be able to make the deal work financially, and negotiations are continuing with the Pro League and Neymar's representative. All we know is that Neymar will not be registered for the second half of the Saudi season, and it is now up to the player to make a decision on where he wants to play. In terms of action to look forward to, the Australian Open, I'll definitely be watching. Emma Raducanu taking on Iga Swiatek. Looking forward to that one. Emma Navarro versus Ons Jabeur. This is at 2:30 a.m. They are playing the third round of the tournament. Yannick Sinner versus Marcos Giron. That is at 10 a.m. Also, Coco Gauff in action against Leila Fernandez at 10 a.m. And Taylor Fritz versus Gael Monfils. This is selected fixtures to look forward to with regards to the Australian Open tomorrow. With that said, it is a wrap from my side. For now, I'll have more sports on Monday.
Okay, so quick thought. I mean, in terms of the weekend, what's your plans besides watching tennis? You mentioned that already.
Literally, that is what I'm going to be watching. The Australian
tennis,
and also hoping that Mamelodi Sundowns makes it through to the quarterfinals.
And tennis live is like
CAF
what time
Champions
if you're watching live?
2:30 a.m.
You know?
2:30 a.m.
Okay, 2 o'clock in the morning.
So if you're a tennis lover, you will wake up.
Okay, there we are. I've done it, not for tennis, but I have done that when it really matters. Absolutely.
Which is for which sport?
Well, I won't say it's one sport, but it's been, well, certainly South African, the very first World Cup, 92 World Cup, where we played all our games in Australia and New Zealand. They were like 2 in the morning till 10 in the morning. But this whole nation watched for the very first time. So yes, you know, and then other big sporting events as and when they come up. Like I think the Olympic Games when it's in the USA. I think the Football World Cup that's going to come up next year is a mess because of it's USA, Canada, Mexico. Yeah, get used to 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, looking forward to it.
Well, there we are.
But that's it. Ke nna Tumeng Kgapele, Modimo ke yo.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Abafana West 10 and the Rockets are both looking for a decent spot in the top half. They are all confident they will walk away from the battlefield with jubilance. This is the Betway Premiership. Catch the great passion and drama of Mzansi's beautiful game. Golden Arrows FC takes on TS Galaxy FC on Saturday, 18 January, live on SABC 1 at 2:30 p.m. and SABC radio stations at 3:30 p.m. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, the last economics bulletin report for the week. Jimmy, what's in your bag? What's moving markets, if anything?
This is one of the few Fridays that we are celebrating going into the weekend. Markets had a really good day today. There was a lot of movement from the early morning. We started off the morning at around 4 o'clock in the morning, South African time, when China gave us their GDP numbers. And those GDP numbers surprised a lot of the naysayers that said that the Chinese economy had slowed down. Year-on-year GDP numbers from China north of 5% when we look at the latest quarterly readings. And that sent markets into a bit of confidence mode. We saw that Asian markets traded a bit in mixed territory, with the ASX in Sydney and the Nikkei in Tokyo being in the red, but China and the Hong Kong index were both in the green. European markets were all in the green, more than 1%. The FTSE up 1.5%, the DAX 1.2%, and the CAC 40 1.1%. Our own local markets were also positive, loving the sentiment that was being put out into the market, with financial stocks recovering about 1.6% today. Industrials up 1.2% today. Resources up 0.2%. The top 40 up 1.3%. The all share 1.25% in the green. The gold price 1.3% in the green at the moment, $2,711 or $2,712 a fine ounce there. Brent crude holding steady at $81.05 a barrel. Platinum and palladium not doing too much at the moment. Platinum at $965.50 and palladium at around $968.50. The other big movers on the day: the price of Bitcoin back above $104,000 a coin, and the price of Ethereum $3,424 odd dollars a coin there. If we look at the rand, 18 rand 69 against the US dollar, gaining a further third of a percent, almost 0.5% at one stage during the day. The British pound at 22 rand 82 cents, 0.5% stronger there, and the euro will cost you 19 rand and 28 cents, about 0.25% less than what it would have cost you this time yesterday. $1 Australian cost you 11 rand and 62 cents. We are anticipating that, of course, on Monday, that much awaited inauguration of President Donald Trump will take place in the U.S. We are hoping to see some form of market movements going into next week as well. There's some data points that are coming up, but next week all eyes will be on the Davos gathering of the World Economic Forum that will take place next week, and that will likely drive some sentiment or some volatility in the markets. But we will definitely take the strong close to the week. It's been quite a while since we've seen such a good close to the week on the SA40, especially going into the tail end of last year. So it looks like we're on the rebound. It looks like things are looking good, especially to close out this week, as I said. Hopefully the momentum continues into next week and we can have a strong month of January. But that's a story for Monday. That's where we'll leave the markets for this weekend, and we'll be back on Monday. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, you have a great weekend, and we'll certainly will catch up as far as we can't wait for that inauguration. Well, speak for yourself, Jimmy. But anyway, we will certainly cover that inauguration in some way or the other of Donald Trump. Right. Let's get back to where we are right now. Poppy Khoza with me, Director of the South African Civil Aviation Authority. She's part of what we call the Friday Fireside Chat, and we'll continue talking all the way up to 6 o'clock. And you can join us too. If you know Poppy personally, if you've been on her journey, if you understand the work she's done, that's the type of call I want to hear from you. Or you can WhatsApp us, right? Because it's less about dealing with the issues in a very serious way, but just more like, hey, I know this person and I can't believe what she's done and what she's achieved. If that's you, then give us a shout. 086 000 2032, and then WhatsApp. You can text or voice note us 0614 104 107.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, continuing then with Poppy Khoza. So, Poppy, I want to ask you this then. I mean, you've given that fabulous sense of your journey, but this is an important one. If you then reflect on your journey, and it's certainly a best-in-class journey, and I often talk about champions, right? Is there one thing upon reflection, either in the decision you've taken, or, well, maybe the travel and tourism would be one, obviously, but not so much the decision you've taken about jobs, but in terms of maybe the attitude that you've embraced that is effectively had the result of you being as successful as you are? What would that be?
So I think in the main, I would say that, once I've taken a decision to pursue something, I put my mind and heart into it, and I commit fully from planning to execution. It doesn't mean that there won't be any curveballs, in the process, but in everything that I do, I always trust God and I trust the process, because I normally live, by the word, particularly in fact, it's a verse in the Bible that says, who God calls, He enables, and I always try to tap into, that strength, that God has given. And ask for the guidance to take the right decisions all the time. Sometimes, you ordinarily would want to take your own decisions, but, counting on God's wisdom to guide the process, I think it's something that is very important. So I seldom just go, to things without asking, the superpowers to give guidance.
Yeah,
and it has really helped, in many years, because it's not about just doing things that I want to do, but I think whatever that I do, I would ask that everything that I do, it must be predestined by God. And and that has worked for me. And
Okay.
to ask, to that ear to listen when, something should not be done, and I try to stay away from it. I think, constantly asking for God to give you wisdom.
Well, I mean, thank you for thank you for sharing that. I will get to some of the callers in a second. Just so, how then do you fight distraction? I mean, you made the point when you commit to something, you give it your all, right? Which then either means you're able to commit to many things, or maybe you commit to less things than others because you're able to kick out the distraction. How do you fight distraction?
Oh, I've been, I've had my fair share. In fact, I think where I am, distractions are just the order of the day. But to me, it's really about sticking to the principle, sticking to what needs to be done, and trying not to be distracted. When I was appointed, Ashraf, to be honest with you, there were too many naysayers. Took to social media platforms, particularly in the aviation platforms, and they said a host of things, because becoming the first woman, director of civil aviation was a taboo. It was something that, I think some of the industry members were not prepared for, but some really did embrace, and they became the shoulder to lean on when, things got a bit tough, when distraction, when you got distracted. And, it's those angels, who are God sent, who will always, try to step in and say, are you okay? What can we do, to assist? So I think I realized much earlier in life that no man is an island. You are because of others. And I really, try to surround myself with people that will be the voice of reason, because things will come and you don't possess all the wisdom in the world. And you need others to lift you up when things, get tough, or you need others who have, ideas and better ideas than yours to have that ability to listen and, give yourself, time to process things and try as much as possible to trust that the decision is the right one.
Well, whatever you do, I can tell you now, people certainly admire you, they like you, they respect you. Forget the naysayers from then, okay? I certainly am one of them, and you know that, have certainly been...
But I'm very grateful to them, trust me, Ashraf, because they made me realize, they say, there's a saying that say, you'll never know how strong you are until being strong is the only option you have. So I'm grateful, because there are many lessons that I learned. In fact, some of them, they became my, rear view mirror, when they say this, and I would say, okay, I'll do it this way.
All right, let's get to some of the let's get to some of the callers. I want to get to Victor in a second, but let's start with Charmaine. Hi, Charmaine.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm very good indeed, but I have a sense you don't want to talk to me. You want to talk to Poppy, right? Go ahead.
Yes. Actually, I wrote a WhatsApp, so they called me back to just deliver this message to my boss. I'd like to say to her, we are so grateful to have a leader like you. You have kept this ship, and we don't have any doubt that in the future we will be the stars of the aviation. And you are just a phenomenal woman. I look so much up to you, DCA, and we know that I know that you are one of the best women in the world, and we are so grateful for the exceptional leadership and vision you have within this industry. And always note, DCA, that we are behind you, and I love you.
There we are. I love and it's not even Valentine's Day. I love you, and you're one of the best people in the world. Poppy, respond. You got 30 seconds to respond very quickly. Yeah.
She's another phenomenal woman. I've worked with Charmaine for the longest time, and I just want to say to Charmaine, I love you too, and thank you for everything that you've been, for the person that you've been to me, I'm a bit emotional now. So thank you. I truly appreciate it.
Well, that's a beautiful call. Thanks for making the effort to call in, Charmaine. It's really wonderful. We'll get to Victor after this.
I feel great, I feel nice.
Kasho, what's the go? We're coiling on the highest, the summer level. What's the qua? It's the Nandi Sessions with Mr. Showdem. It's the fa of live music. It's the go on SABC Plus. Catch the JR Feel Good Sessions at 6 Fridays only on SABC 1. Mzansi for sure.
Wekundu Wamsimbazi are playing for maximum points to finish top of Group A. But CSC strongly believe that their first position belongs to them. This is the top table clash of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup. Experience the delight of African football. Simba Sports Club versus CS Constantine. This Sunday, 19 January at 3 p.m. live on SABC 1. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay, the fireside chat with Poppy Khoza. We've got a great guest as well next week, by the way. Can't confirm that as yet, but we do. Let's get Victor's thoughts. Hi, Victor.
Good day, Ashraf.
Are you that Victor?
Yeah, Victor Homueswana.
Mr. Africa.
I'm reluctant to call talk radio because I end up feeling like I'm hogging the airways. But, just like you, I met Poppy through the speaking engagements at the aviation, and I had no idea of her story, no idea whatsoever. In fact, I want to say this. In sports, Ashraf, that when they say if you don't know the referee at the end of the match, you know they had a good game.
Yeah.
Because, you don't remember the referee if they had a good game. You remember them if they had a bad game. I am sure many people in South Africa who fly have no idea who Poppy Khoza is. But to hear that the woman in charge of the aviation and safety in our skies is so spiritual and so humble, because in my interactions with her, I have not seen any CEO attitude like step out of my way, I'm keeping your skies safe. I've seen her interact with people from all over the world in aviation, and I've just seen the most humble person. And now listening to this conversation the past 45 minutes or so just confirms what I've always suspected, but I couldn't have guessed. Really, Poppy, your story is so heartwarming and so reassuring. You almost remind me of Mandisa, who conquered the airwaves in the Air Force from your part of the world as well. So I don't know. I just want to ask one question.
Quickly, yeah.
This imposter syndrome that everybody talks about, because it doesn't sound like you ever had an idea that you'd be where you are. But congratulations and thank you for
great
the
stuff.
person that you are.
Perfect. Listen, Victor, we need to have a chat. We had a chat, I know, before the holiday break. We need to get you on the air as well, by the way, talking about things Africa and business in Africa pretty soon. Okay, Africa is open for business, and you know that. Thanks for that. Poppy, wonderful call from Victor. Go ahead, respond about the imposter syndrome very quickly. Yeah.
So, sure, yeah, I think I do suffer from it, maybe, I think, but because it's the nature of the person that I am, and I just want to do things and get them, over and done with and go home and sleep. But, someone said to me, upon reflection that, but it's okay not to be, shy about what you do, because it's no longer about you. It's about, the young women who are coming after you. And they also need to know and understand, your journey and, just to impart your experiences. I think it has been my struggle, but I'm trying to come out of it slowly. I must be really, because I find that sometimes it's very difficult to be out there. As I say, I prefer to do things and
like the unknown referee, as Victor said. Okay, listen, we've got about 4 minutes to go, so I'm gonna rush this with some quick questions and very quick answers, okay? Because we just don't have much time. Now, I know that, obviously a lot of people would love to have you sharing a seat at their table, but who would you like to share a seat at the table with? If you could choose one person that you'd like to spend some time with, who?
Honestly speaking, Ashraf, I don't have one single person, but I have a group, of women that I would want to share, a seat on the table with, from politicians to business women, to women in the rural area who possess so much wisdom. It's unbelievable.
Okay, so
just to teach
all of them collectively, yeah. Okay,
in the table,
all right,
and have a conversation and just take the nuggets of wisdom from each one of them.
All right.
Because there are too many.
All right. Having said that, I'd love to ask you if you can give a shout out to one young South African and a young person that has so impressed you. Who would that be?
Ashraf, I have too many again.
You're going to be in trouble. Okay. Well, maybe you can tweet it out. I'll certainly share that later on.
Yeah. I interact a lot with young persons in this industry. And, I've seen many of them, doing amazing things. The student pilots, who knew nothing about flying, but who are in this space, aeronautical engineers, air traffic controllers, doctors, specializing in aviation medicine, those who design flight procedures, cabin crew who are safety officers, trained and licensed. And all these people, or all these young people, they had big dreams with less means, but against all odds, they've pushed the boundaries. So all of them, I say, they are my heroes every day. And
that's beautiful.
They remind me of a younger me at some point. And I say to them, keep moving and shine that light for others as well.
Nice. Okay, we've got 90 seconds to go, by the way, Poppy. Time is very important in the airline industry, you know that. This is the different sort of the airwaves. What about, give me a book or more than one book quickly that you'd recommend that we should read?
So the one that I've been reading recently, it's Leadership from the Inside Out by Kevin Cashman, which talks about, a host of things: personal mastery, leading with courage, authenticity, and, being self-aware. I think it is a good book to read, particularly for those who want to be in the leadership positions, who want to venture into management, because we need women leaders.
Okay.
We need women of integrity who are going to lead and take our country forward.
Leadership from the inside out. What one thing in 30 seconds about our country that you think needs the most urgent attention?
One thing. Sure, I've got a long list.
Well, I'll tell you what, we
need to be decisive in leadership and take decisions that are in the best interests of our country. Okay. That's what we need.
All right. I'll tell you what, we'll have a thought leader conversation with you about leadership some other time. I'd love to do that. That's a different tone, more about just actual accountability. Let's end with this. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, as a person who came, who saw, and who conquered.
Wow. Conquered is interesting. Who came, who saw, who conquered. And a person whose time is up, unfortunately, for now, but not time up in life. Continue to lead, continue to inspire, continue to do the type of things that South Africa needs. I often talk about linking, personal to the collective purpose, and I think you do that so well. So continue doing all of that. Wonderful to chat to you, and thanks for being our 2025, the very first Fireside Chat, and I look forward to another conversation with you, maybe more specifically on leadership, because I think we need to have that conversation very, very soon. South Africa, in fact, needs to have that. Poppy, thank you for your time.
Very honored. Thank you so much, Ashraf. I truly appreciate it.
Okay, lovely. It's a great privilege talking to Poppy Khoza. We'll have that up as a podcast as well. And some great guests coming up on Monday, because today is the last day of the week in terms of the National Pulse. But you know the story, the National Pulse is 24/7. You can tweet, tag all of us right throughout the weekend. We'll continue chatting then. Right now, let's get the news. It's 6 o'clock. Here's Eva Chipa.